Hello you, welcome to Poker Night Live. 4 hours of fun, punctuated by some cards.
Good idea.
That's what'll happen. My name's Caspar. I'm joined by James Browning.
Hi, Cass.
How are you, mate?
Hot.
Yes, he's just made it.
And distraught.
Are you distraught?
I played a county tennis match.
You shouldn't be playing tennis, you're a poker player.
Lost 7-5 in the third. It's a bad beat story.
That's physical, mate. That's what happens when you play physical sports, isn't it? Sit on your arse and just move the mouse a bit. That's the extent of what we should be doing. We'll be doing that all night for the next 4 hours, so stay with us. It's your show, of course, folks. As always, do get in touch with the show for all your questions, all your thoughts, texts. Oh, no, it's not 6221, is it, anymore? It's poker at 84222. See, well, I have been away.
You have been away. It sounds like for a long time.
I've only done this show about twice in the last 2 months. Poker 84222, and the email is poker@pokernightlive.co.uk. I'll tell you what, when I came into this studio on Friday night, it was like visiting your old school. It was so long since I'd been there, and it was empty. But you know what, it's nice to be here.
It was nice actually to visit your old school when it's empty, sort of something a little bit you can wander around.
Much better than when it was full.
Yeah, much better.
I found, yes. Obviously, folks, the point of the show tonight is watching live internet poker with all the cards face up, shown with a 5-minute delay so the people at home can't be cheating. But James and I are going to do our level best to bring that to life with commentary and advice and tips. And for those of you that don't know, there's a great thread on the forums that I'm looking at right now called Caspar's 5 Evening Shifts, where a lot of people have posted their their questions for us here. I don't know why that's so funny. My producer's laughing in my ear. And we're going to be going through those. So, James, I hope you've got your implied heads on tonight, because we are going to be looking at implied odds. Implied odds is what we're going to be looking at tonight, folks. We're going to be making sense of it and making sure we're all au fait with it. So by 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going to know when we should be factoring implied odds in and when we shouldn't, and to what extent we should. There's a great quote here: implied odds are overrated in poker as they provide an excuse to justify terrible calls. In a word, James, believe, agree or not agree?
There's a flavour of truth to that.
You're sitting on the fence. Let's have a look at some tables. Maestro, please.
Yes, we're kicking off. It's a 25-cent, 50-cent cash game. Full complement of players. John Boy Rebel, there could be plenty of action. And it's a sit and go for $5, and it's the first level, 10-20.
No, because that's $5, that's the old structure, isn't it, with only 1,000 chips. I'm getting used to this. You see, now there's $20.
This is the
new structure, 2,000 in chips.
Which is 2,000 in chips, but this is still the blinds going up every 10 rounds.
No, 12 rounds.
This is a 12-round one.
12 rounds.
Because there's one also where you can go, oh no, it's the £50 one with the 2,000 where you go up 10 rounds.
Well, don't confuse things, James.
Sorry.
I mean,
you've got to have the name to be on the new structure, haven't you? Yes. That was a multi-table there, the green.
Just in
it
case
flashed away there.
Just in case you were wondering. God, we're professional.
A quick flash.
So anyway, I mentioned implied odds there before we had a look at the tables. That's what I want people's emails on tonight. I want to bottom it out, James.
Wow.
How about that? We're going to bottom it out. You're the man to do it, I think. I'll just catalyse, if you like. I'll just ask questions and poke and prod. By the end of the evening, we'll have it all out of you, mathematically. Let's go back to that MTT that we saw very briefly.
Here we have our MTT, and this is at the first level, 10-20.
It is. We've got 126 players on this tonight. All of them have paid $10, plus, of course, $1 for the pleasure. Yep.
And they kick off, they get a 1,500 chips, and the blinds increase every 12 minutes.
It's 12 minutes, is it?
Yes.
First place, therefore, is paying 30% of the prize pool. That's $378. Second place is paying 20%, $252. And if you're new to poker, you'll notice immediately that that means 50% of the prize pool, 50% of the money created by those 126 players, i.e., $1,260, 50% is going to be divided by the top two. So, what's tournament poker all about, James?
Well, I think getting the top two in this case.
Top two, isn't it? Is that a disproportionate division there?
I am an advocate for the flatter structure in tournaments, because, especially in live tournaments, because generally I see people getting to the last 5 or 6 and all they want to do is to make a deal. So they obviously find the jumps between the prizes too big.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? You would have thought that the proliferation of deals would be an indication of what players actually wanted, which is flatter structures. So why don't they start with flatter structures in the first place?
Because the problem is with the players is that in their minds they like the thought of this big first prize, because when they're at home sleeping and dreaming about winning, they win the first prize outright, no deals. So they want as much money there as possible. But when it comes to reality and they think, oh, yes, I got a speeding ticket and I got a girlfriend's birthday.
Do you know that I've been done speeding, James? Are you actually trying to rile me?
You've got to tell.
I tell you what, that is the best read anyone's ever had on me. Seriously, I'm sitting here, I'm not even mentioning it. I've got a court date in a month's time and he's seen right through me.
I've got better ones coming, so you better be getting nervous.
I really am, mate, I tell you.
Anyway, once we get to the realities of life, let's do a deal.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And it all started off, one of the sort of birthplaces of poker. In fact, I was speaking to a guy who used to be a manager there, Duncan. He's now at Asper's, the all-sparkling provincial casino. Probably the smartest one in the country, I would imagine.
Are you looking for a free buy-in, James?
Yes, I am. Angela. No, it's a great place, actually.
I might be there on July the 3rd.
You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, there's a forum thread. Have you seen the forum thread that's all about when a few people can go and play in Asper's?
Oh, no.
There is a forum thread. You carry on talking and I'll find it for you.
Okay.
You carry on, mate.
Anyway, Duncan, who was at the Rainbow, which was basically the birthplace of poker in this country, virtually.
Where's the Rainbow?
In Birmingham.
Okay.
And they started off, really influenced the whole tournament scene in this country. And they kicked off, in fact, I was speaking to Duncan the other night, and he said they started off, they only used to have 3 prizes.
Right.
So however many people in the tournament, they just had 3 prizes. And of course, the reason was that they wanted to advertise how much first prize was.
Right.
We had a tournament the other night. First prize was...
Yeah.
And it was like a jackpot type thing, where people said, oh yeah, Fred just got the first prize. Yeah, he won so much. It was only a tenner to enter. Mm. So it was a good word of mouth, bit of advertising for them. Mm. But now, as players are playing more tournaments, I actually think the flatter structure really suits them. And also, I would like to see something which encouraged people to play the tournament out. I'd like to see the real winner.
You know something? Yes, that's a very good point. That's a very good point, James. What I would slightly disagree with the notion that the flatter structure is better per se. I think it's simply this: is that let's say you've got a tournament, theoretically, right? You've got 100 players, and every single one of those players is exactly the same. And let's say we're just going to pay all of the players who make the final 10%, right? If all those players are exactly the same, it doesn't matter whether you play all the final players 10% or whether you play 100% to first place. If you play that tournament 10,000 times, they're all going to have exactly the same return, or 100,000
It's not exactly the same, because you mightn't live long enough for that to balance out.
All right. All right.
But that,
it's a theoretical world, James, with theoretical tournaments.
Okay, but no, I mean that seriously.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Tournament players a long old run. I know that, right? So we're imagining that we're immortals for now.
Right.
Okay. So the point of the matter then is it changes. In other words, all I'm saying with that theoretical concept is it doesn't matter what the payout is if everyone's the same standard of player. Right. Now then, let's say, in fact, what's crucial then is there money added or money taken away? In that scenario, that's what dictates whether you're a winning or losing player. Because actually, in that scenario, in this slightly less theoretical tournament, if everyone played 10% vig for every tournament, you'd make a loss in that tournament over the long run.
If you were all the same standard, of course you would.
Right. Now, I reckon that some players have a certain... let's say a mean in their bell curve for where they're most likely to come. Right? So some players are most likely to come in the bottom 50, some players are most likely to come between about 50 and 10, and then I would say some players will have, obviously no one's most likely to come first, but some players are more likely to come first than others, because if they make the final 3, they're that good at 3-player and 2-player poker. Some players are more likely to come second to third, and then I reckon the next tranche is about 4th to 8th. No, actually, let's say 4th to 6th, 6th to 10th, and then 10th to 20th. And then I wouldn't know how to group it between there and down. Now, I think what I'm saying is if you can understand what sort of, between those 5 tranches, first, second to third, fourth to sixth, sixth to 10th, 10th to 20th, if you can understand where you're most likely proportionately to come, you want to aim for a tournament that's going to
suit
that style, isn't it? That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the little bit I would like to say is,
I understand you've got a message to put across, James.
No, it's basically the long life one, but we'll put it a different way. Just supposing there's only going to be a handful of tournaments with added money. Well, in the short run, of course.
Yeah.
You know, you obviously could get unlucky. In that way, that would suit the players, or probably the better players, if the payout was a flatter structure.
Yeah.
Because they're more likely to get a piece of that added cake.
Okay, that's good. I like that.
Because he likes cake, that's why. No other reason.
It's partly that. I'm partial to Bombay mix at the moment. All right, now let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Right. We've said that I've created 5 tranches, first, second to third, fourth to sixth, sixth to 10th, and 10th to 20th. What sort of style, if possible to characterise this, what sort of playing style is likely to favour each of those places? Let's take a player like Jacarama. There's also a big spending loose player who plays in Middlesbrough that we know of who plays like that, right? I would say he's likely to come. Can we name him?
John Law.
I wasn't thinking of John Law.
Oh, well, John Law is a great chip getter.
Okay, yeah.
Bob the Builder.
Yeah, you okay with that? I was thinking that players like that are likely to come in the top few or bust out quite soon after the rebuy period, aren't they?
Yes, because they are more likely to get an obscene amount of chips early in the tournament. And generally, someone getting an obscene amount of chips early in the tournament probably has been breaking quite a few rules.
Better you say it than me.
Okay, so it's just like a little analogy is basically if you watch a gambler playing blackjack and if you watch a professional blackjack player, the gambler's going to look far more exciting than the professional blackjack player.
Sure.
And he's more likely to hit the front first.
Sure.
Because he doesn't care if if it's in his favour or if it's not in his favour.
Okay.
And the poker players, some of them are a little bit like that. They don't care if it's in their favour or not, but they're happy to push their chips in.
Okay.
And they become great chip getters.
Right, now...
Or they can do.
They can do.
Or have to have 17 buy-ins.
Right, okay. But here's the question. If by being great chip getters, they stand a greater chance of getting into those first 3 places where, let's just check it again, on this tournament, 62% of the chips of the prize pool is going to be given to the first 3 places. If by being great chip getters they stand a greater chance of being there, is that not a winning tournament strategy?
Right.
Financially.
If they know what to do when they get chips. Now, if you're a player who's a great chip getter, but once you get the chips, now what do I do? You don't know what to do. Of course, this is not really a great bargain because you've paid a lot of money probably to get the chips and you don't know what to do once you've got them. Now, some of these people, like John Law for sure, once he gets chips, he's a monster. And that's why, he very nearly got a bracelet in Vegas last year. He came second. He's had numerous tournament wins because once he starts to get those chips, wham. He's dynamic, he's fearless and he remains fearless. Now you see him sometimes crash and burn and you say, my goodness, he had all the chips in the tournament and he went out 11th. Because he doesn't stop. Now he, of course, will win more tournaments because he's more volatile. And volatility from a player will increase the times you come first. It's the same in golf. A volatile golfer will win more tournaments. John Daly, exactly right. Whereas you get a very steady tournament player like Stephen Ames or whatever, probably hits a top 30 time and time again, but doesn't win so many tournaments.
So, I mean, the trouble is what you're saying.
Now what do we do?
Well, now it's confounding me because you don't really play like that and I don't really play like that. I mean, I like to play sit and goes where I accumulate in those early stages. I mean, this is all going to filter through into the implied odds discussion that we're going to have soon. But what you're saying is, I mean, I rate a great player to be Stephen Liu.
Yes,
now,
he's
Stephen
great
Liu
player,
accumulates chips and he does know what to do with them later on because he's capable of really playing very aggressively or really pulling back with them in those later stages.
It's worthwhile, Stephen Liu, if he's spending buy-ins or whatever, because that's it. You've hit the nail on the head. If he accumulates the chips, he definitely knows what to do with them. In fact, he will strike the fear of God into the table. People won't want to be battling with him. And he'll be getting chips, no risk. No risk. So my Grand National theory comes in. He doesn't give himself extra fences to jump because he just takes the pots down. You never see his hands because he frightens the people. And he knows who wants to stay in the tournament and he plays on that. But he's a great tournament player. In fact, just someone up there the other day, I think, was saying, you know, he could well be the best tournament player in the country.
I think he is.
And there we go, another vote for Lucky Lou.
We were talking, Stephen and I, the other day, and we were talking about the World Series last year, and he said when he was chip leader, he thought he was going to win it. And I said, I thought you were going to win it as well. I nearly put a tenner on it with Nick.
Oh, that would be tasty, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Now, we're going to go back to the game in a second. Let's just read this email out very quickly. It's Ken Snappit. He says, hi, Caspar. You said you'd be discussing implied odds tonight, so I thought the following might give some points for discussion. Ken's given us a great post in the forums as well, which I'm going to read out, but we'll get this really quick. So, James, have a think about these. Now, we don't need to answer these now, all right, because we're going to be discussing these for the rest of the night. But here we are to kick us off. Are implied odds more important than pot odds in no limit? Are pot odds really important in limit? Because Dan Harrington talks a lot about pot odds in no limit, right? So that's where he's coming from there, I think. Hands good for implied odds and hands bad for implied odds, e.g. straights good, flush bad, because flush is a more visible hand that people won't pay off. Number 3, how much implied odds do you need? E.g., I will often call a raise with a small pair from a big stack because of the implied odds they should have, ace, ace, etc., and I hit trips. Against a small stack, this can be bad because you don't have those odds, absolutely correct. However, how big should their stack be? If you have 7.5 to 1 to hit your trips, you really need more than this to compensate for the times you'll still lose even if you hit. Bearing in mind, if you do hit, you could be likely to lose your entire stack, absolutely correct. Number 4. Slow playing big hands for implied odds. Could slow playing ace, ace and king, king be a way for a tight player to get good implied odds as they won't believe you have it? So there's some thoughts to get the ball rolling. What I want to apply this to tonight, James, and I've talked about this for the last 2 nights on the show, is the concept of playing deep stacked, and by which I mean having more than 100 big blinds in your stack, and other players having more than 100 big blinds in your stack, versus the kind of tournament situation that most players are going to be in tournament buy-ins of around $100 or less, which is, you know, about an hour into the tournament looking at most players having 10 to 15 big blinds in their stack, you know,
right.
And the issue that throws up, and the implications for different play that has. Yeah. But we don't need to talk about it now, we can talk about it throughout.
Okay, just very, very briefly,
Absolutely.
I just like to think that the amount of chips you have in relation to the size of the blinds is basically a license. And this is a license for the way you were allowed to play at that time. And that changes. And as soon as you lose a pot, where have you gone? Oh, I've gone down there. I'm now not allowed to try my suited connectors anymore. I haven't got enough money.
Brilliant.
Oh, won a pot. I'm back into the territory where I'm in late position. I can play with virtually anything here because I'm now where my chips aren't worth as much.
Good.
So therefore I can experiment. And I want people to look at their situation like that and treat it as, I have a license to do this now. It's been taken away. Ooh, I can do even more now. And think of the game like that as you're going along.
Fantastic. Folks, it's going to be some red-hot poker chat tonight. Can I just say that I'm feeling woefully underdressed next to James's tie. I don't know what to do about that, unless we've got one in the gallery. Feels like a private members club where I should have been given one on the door. Can I also say a big hello to Alice Bufton, who's watching tonight just to see me. She won't understand any of this implied odds chat, not a clue, but hopefully she's enjoying it anyway. Alice, have a nice night.
Is she Oriental?
No, she's not good. No, you're really putting your foot in it, mate.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had another tell.
Look at my wan grin. Let's get to a game. Sharpish. I'm going to be banned from driving, James. I mean, I'm glad you find it funny.
What's Oriental got to do with being banned from
I'm
driving?
trying to change the subject.
Ah.
Did you see how I did that?
Well, not very well, because I'm still talking about the Oriental bit.
No, absolutely, yes. I've so singularly failed, I realise.
So she's not Oriental, this one?
No, she's not. No, she's not a potential girlfriend. Thank Christ.
Whoa! No, that is strong. Okay, we've got a cash game. We better have a look at a game here. 25.50, and of course you can buy them for $50, or as little as $5.
Let's have a few hands, then let's get back to a bit of implied odds chat, James. What are you looking for tonight, apart from implied odds? Anything particular? When was the last time you were on?
Oh, it was last... Goodness, you got me. It was last week.
Really?
About a week ago. I've sort of got a a busy week.
You've been playing tournaments?
A bit. Actually, not this last week. Yeah, I did actually. I played at Asper's.
Yeah.
On the Tuesday.
Any joy?
No, we played in a cash game and that was okay.
Good.
Got some nice cash games there. They've got a festival coming up as well, July the 10th to the 16th.
Have they? Oh.
So
I'm going to be there on the 3rd. So there we are. It's called Poker in Newcastle, is the thread on the forums. Poker in Newcastle. And a live poker in Newcastle. And we're going to be in Asper's on Monday, July the 3rd, with any luck. So pop along, James. Pop along, all of you. And we'll see you there.
So what is it going to be?
Nothing. It's just going to be...
A meet?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, then hang around and go there for the festival, because I think that's going to be pretty tasty.
James, I can't hang around. Every day of my diary's gone, mate.
Oh.
But I've got a week at the beginning of July in Newcastle.
A shame you can't adjust it to get to the festival.
I know. It's life, isn't it? There's a lot of things I'd like to do. Lindsay and I last night saw just ridiculous hands coming out. There are regularly 4 or 5 premium hands per pre-flop deal. It was bizarre. I kept saying, is internet poker rigged?
I like saying that in the live game when you get the same flops.
Oh no, the best thing is...
Aces there, just as soon as you say, look at that, we've got aces under the gun.
And that's a point to go to the percentage hands played.
I'm going to keep on screwing at the table.
Yeah,
with my
well, we
eyes.
see very quickly, folks, fishing for chips, down at 16, John Boy Rebel, up at the top, 40, back to the aces, I'm not a minger, 4-7 suited, misses his board.
He's only got 12.95. Dean, $1.
Poor old Dean.
Couldn't get it.
Doesn't get the maximum from them. But my favourite wind-up note is when you're online and you're playing a sit and go, or whatever you want to play in, and just after a few minutes, just type nonchalantly in the chat box, having not said anything up until that point. Don't make a big thing about it. Just say, can everyone else see everyone's cards? Sends people into a bit of a panic, even though they know deep down that I'm joking.
But one day...
Well, I now notice that when you type poker into Google, on the right-hand side, and these click-throughs cost like tens of dollars, you now get how to cheat at poker.
Oh, I know.
But I mean...
But it's a scam.
Yeah, but for them to be paying that much per click-through, when you do that in Google, you have to bid in an auction, right?
Yeah.
And the word poker within the search tool auctions off for the highest prices on the web at the moment, right? So that would cost you about $10 a click-through. So if it's costing them $10 a click-through and they're charging it at about $40...
They must be selling quite a few.
They must be selling quite a few. It's really bizarre. I mean, it makes sense if they're, this little bespoke, not bespoke, but cottage operation, operating at the back of a garage, just trying to flog them to the gullible. But when you're coming up at the top of a Google auction search...
Listen, but it ties in with my beliefs even on the game. One of my sayings is, whenever you do anything which seems like get rich quick,
yeah,
it's generally wrong. And that's going to be wrong as well.
Okay.
It's a get rich quick scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Forget it. Just get down to the basics of the game and look for your weaknesses, look for your strengths. Try and correct your weaknesses and use those strengths as much as you can.
Ace-Jack there on the button. Let's see how it plays out to him.
Well, I'm not a minger. What's he going to do with his deuces? Because he hasn't got so many chips. Ah, yes, I thought he might. He's looking to try and get back into the game here.
Now, what is that, James? When we do that, and by the way, I'm not claiming that we're, poker geniuses in any way, but when I'm sure everyone at home gets it as well. You just get this feeling that someone there is going to raise. Very often, when you know that they shouldn't really, you just get this feeling. Where is that? Where does that come from?
Well, mine was just from I've seen too many people play badly when they've got short stacks,
right.
And they try to push because they think they can, they think they can get away with it. Yeah, obviously, listen, he was hoping to end up just heads up, and he thought at the end of the day he would push all his chips in. He felt he wasn't risking too much.
Mm.
So, well, he's captured a few dollars there, but I definitely sensed he was going to do it.
See, that partly answers it in the way that I'm thinking myself, because I'm trying to get to the this concept of what your subconscious knows and what it does, right?
Right.
Tell you a story, nothing to do with poker. I'm on IMDb today, right? And I see a film that was directed, you know IMDb, Internet Movie Database?
No.
You go through these films and it'll tell you all the cast of the film, and then you can click on the cast or the crew, and then it'll tell you their filmography, and then you can click on a film and spend hours on it, disappear into it for hours. And I see a film directed by Bruce Beresford, right?
Okay.
And I click on Bruce Beresford, and I'm sitting there thinking, right, here's the first thing that my mind thinks, right? The first thing my mind thinks is Bruce Beresford, and my mind thinks he's directed one good film. It doesn't even know what it is, right? But it thinks he's directed one good film. So that's one thing that's locked in my mind. That's just standard memory, but it's quite a weird thing for my memory to remember, right? Right. And then the next thing that happens is I click on Bruce Beresford, as I'm doing right now, and I'm thinking to myself, what is this one good film that he directed? And I see what I think is the word drive, right? And I immediately go, it's Driving Miss Daisy, okay? And I look down the filmography, and there is Driving Miss Daisy. Except the film that I saw was not Driving Miss Daisy, it was the word Prince in Prince of Cool, which is some film that he's in pre-production on. Yeah? So my brain read that word Prince, which looks a little bit like drive with a capital P, looking like a D, R-I, as drive. Okay. So what I'm saying is, in my subconscious, it knows it's Driving Miss Daisy, yes, and the word Prince triggers that memory. Yeah? What I'm getting at for that simple little story that happened this afternoon is that there's a massive information that's in our subconscious that needs to be triggered and opened up. And in fact, I was reading, what was it? It was either the book by Oliver, what's his name? Oliver, oh God. It's They F You Up Your Mum and Dad, who's a psychologist, or it's Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz the other day. And it's talking about a part of the brain that contains all your memories. And when surgeons have performed brain surgeries on patients, right, and they've been awake, and they've stimulated this part of the brain, actually literally by touching it, patients have experienced vivid memories from all different parts of their childhood that they've never thought about before. Wow. And the claim for this part of the brain is that it contains every memory. Every memory. So it's not just a superstitious thing about all your subconscious. It is. It's the C drive. It's everything's there. But literally everything that you've ever experienced is there. So, you know, when we talk about this application to poker, it's not some sort of airy-fairy, ooh, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could do this kind of thing. What I'm saying is when you get that feeling about I'm not a minger, it might be something very, very surface level, like I've seen a lot of people with bad stacks, with low stacks play badly. Or I think it's just the recall of 1,000 situations like that, where you've got some sense, you can't even see these people, but you've got some sense that they're going to do something, because it's built on exactly the same information that's built up to that moment as lots of other situations.
Also, I've seen I'm Not a Minger play quite a few times before. Yeah. That's right, and my subconscious will probably remember some of the plays.
Absolutely.
So,
well, it remembers all the plays, it's just a question of what triggers it.
Yes, I think I used to say in backgammon, etc., it was just a matter of, you know, it's just seeing the film before. Because each backgammon game takes a different shape. You'd say, oh, yes, I've seen this film before. And it's a similar thing.
9s, 10s and jacks here on the board, James.
Wow. And John Boy has got a 9 and a queen.
Yeah, and the 10 and the 8. So the straight possibilities are going to be few and far between.
And the jacks is looking in good shape.
Yeah, he's the best, and he raises it as such. If you've got one first position raise there, James, and a late position caller, what do you think with jacks? I mean, if I'm going to raise with jacks, it's going to be a bigger raise than that. All right, well, Sekmi has folded, but it's certainly not axiomatic that he would, is it?
I don't mind that so much. I'll tell you why. He's done 3 times the raise. Yeah. The guy's raised 2. It's 4 times a big blind. He's raised 3 times his raise.
But hang on. Someone's raised that and then someone's called it. Right. If it was just that situation, if someone had raised it to 2 and then I'd raised it to 6, that's cool. Yeah. If someone raises it to 2 and then someone else calls it, I want to put in a bigger raise because I've got to isolate it to one of those. Yes. Yeah.
And unless he just really felt he was going to get I'm Not a Minger, all his chips going in there anyway, I think.
Right, but then I'm still re-raising to get rid of Sekmi. And then Sekmi also worries me because he's in first position.
Exactly.
With his raise. And that first position raise and a call, if I've got a pair of jacks, I mean, do you think a fold is justifiable there at all? If first position raises and someone else calls it?
Well, I'm not a Minger's call doesn't have to be with strength, particularly.
No. Okay.
Because he's short-stacked, he might just be a bit desperate, who knows. So he's not giving you a classic read this time.
Understand.
So he now is actually just basically asking a question, see if anyone's got his strength now. He's putting them out. I think maybe he's done that 6 because he would get away from it if there was a re-raise from the other guy.
Good point. Good point. So it's actually the perfect level of raise because we can drop it if we get re-raised again.
But he's found out where he is. In fact, he's had the dream result. He's gone. The guy who's got very little liability for him because he doesn't have many chips is going to be there.
Yeah.
If he's wrong, he's not too wrong, but he's more likely to be favourite and scoop his chips.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's have another email. Got an email here from 78 on Tilt. And he's also bringing us back to the subject of implied odds, so it's a good cue for a song. He says, "Greetings guys, a question to you both about implied odds. My last 2 bad beats were from small pocket pairs by my opponent making trips and quads. How do we spot them and how do you play them?" Well, notoriously difficult. Let's just pull back from that question and let's just talk to James about implied odds generally. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about implied odds? Are they overrated excuses to play very bad hands, or are they the key to no-limit poker? I
think implied odds are a huge part of no-limit poker, especially no-limit cash games, especially against people who you know can't put a big pair down. And then, of course, it's massive.
Bone doggers. Do you know that we call them
bone doggers? Yes. So it's massive against bone doggers. The best hand, I think, for implied odds, probably because it gives you know how to play it. In fact, are pairs, small pairs, because you know when you've clicked your trips, you know there's a big chance that you're favourite. And, okay, you've got to get lucky. You hope he's going to be against a big card, the guy's clicked, he's not going to let go. In fact, he can now connect. If he hits his card, again, you've made your full house, he's made his trips. Now you're really going to get the rest of his chips, especially if he's someone who can't put it down. So I think there's huge implied odds with the small pairs. And in fact, whereas in a limit game, you have to have enough people in there because you just can't get paid, because you can't raise the bet. But in no limit hold'em, you can actually heads up with a small pair against someone, especially if he's someone who won't put down if he's connected with a pair. And it's a great situation. The one thing I want to have is I want to have deep stack, and I want him to have a deep stack because I want to be well paid. Why? Because it's a difficult thing I'm looking for. I've got to hit my trips, he's got to hit something which he's happy with, and then he's not going to let go and pay me.
Right, and the point is that's going to happen at least 1 in every 10, 12 times, because we're only going to hit the trips 1 in every 7.5 times, 1 in every 8.5 times.
Yeah.
So for all those things to come together, it's going to be 1 in every 10, 12 times. And then for you both to have the deep stack, it's going to be, what, 1 in every 18, 19 times?
Hang on, but it's worse than that.
Right.
Because some of the time, you walk into the over trips and you lose all your stack.
That's right.
So you've got to take that off the equation as well.
OK.
But even so, I think the small pairs are great for playing for implied odds and no-limit hold'em cash games. And I know that a lot of my biggest pots have been won with them. OK, but
we are saying that we believe that we've got to know that by the end of this, in other words, what is the implication? The implication is that we are going to be able to get at least 18 to 20 times the bet that we're calling for at the moment into the pot by the end.
Yes,
yeah?
But I think that's easier to do with those because, as you said, it's hard to tell. And that's the little secret there. It's hard to tell.
OK. So
but one thing here, and I would say why I like them opposed to the flush draws or even the straight draws. There'll be times there will be good implied odds there, but the problem with those hands are that occasionally you're in there and now there's a re-raise from someone else. Now it's just mucked up the whole odds of the situation. Now you're in nightmare street. Whereas with the trips, if you're deep stacked, you can still be getting the implied odds.
Yeah.
You can even call the re-raise, and you know how to play the hand. I've lost it.
OK.
I've got rid of it.
Okay.
Whereas the flush, you feel you more or less get sucked into this.
Well, this is the point that Sklansky makes in terms of this is in terms of make up the game. Now, obviously, we can't say exactly how the game is going to play out, but he says to play straights and flushes. You need a nice passive game because you actually want it to get to the river very gently and then for them to pay you off.
Exactly.
And if you're playing trips, then you want a very aggressive game because you want all that money in on the flop.
Yes,
So
exactly,
that
and
would
that's
dictate
and
which way
he's
you play
so
those
right there, and that he's so right. Well, in my opinion, he's so right. I think that's exactly the key to this.
Okay, before we get back to the game, we're good. We're getting into this subject, but I want one thing bottomed out before we do.
Right.
You're sitting there. You've got a small pair in your stack. Someone calls from very early position, suggesting maybe sort of ace jack, maybe ace queen, maybe a pair of nines. You've got a pair of fours, and you want to call them. What's the minimum number of blinds you want both of you to have in your stacks in order to call that?
Right, the minimum number of blinds. Okay, that's a good question. Actually, I don't want to snap out the answer for that. Let me just chew that over.
Okay.
I want to really think about that.
I'm going to say about 40. Because if you want to get at least 20 times that bet from him, I'm going to say it's got to be at least 40.
Let me just have a little think. I just
fine.
want to just chew that over. It's a good question.
Okay, mate. Let's go back to the game in the meantime.
I just want to put that into relation to sort of playing in my mind. Let me just have a little chew on that.
So we've got 86 players left in this multi-table tournament. They're dropping like the proverbial flies. The big stack is 8,460. And the small stack, is 615. And Blade Brown, sorry mate.
Okay, I've got somewhere near it, I think.
Okay.
Basically, if I could get about if I had about 33 times the bet,
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Okay. I wasn't far off.
No, that's you might well be right. I'm just saying that's for me. That's where that's where I'm feeling comfortable.
Okay, 33 times that. Now, if he would, let me just ask you this question, straight out, right? Middle position raises it to 2.5 times the big blind, right?
Yeah.
And you're on the button with a pair of fives. Would you call that if you both had 33 times the bet in your stack?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. No
You'd
question.
call a raise.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I
This is
call
not
raises.
just a question of calling.
I like this. I'll
Okay.
tell you why.
Two reasons,
in fact,
isn't there?
you probably don't even need to have quite the multiple.
No.
The reason is he's already told you that he's happy with his hand.
Exactly.
So that means he could well have a pair.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's part of the job done.
Yeah.
Now we get zoning in nearer. Well, let me just click this trips on the flop now because he likes it. This is what you want.
Yeah.
Also, you say, well, I've got position on him.
Yeah.
So even if he doesn't connect, it's quite a chance he'll pop a little continuation bet in there anyway. So I can snaffle that one up anyway. So I'm getting a little bit of money thrown back in the pot from him.
When you say snaffle it up, you mean snaffle it up if you hit your trips?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Or possibly, if you feel that the board hasn't really hit him, you might actually be able to ask him a question. You might be able to re-raise him, or raise him rather, after he's put his... If you think it's a continuation bet, maybe I'll now pop out a raise.
Okay, now we're getting...
Because I've got position.
Now we're getting to the realms of aggressive poker, James. So online, what are going to be the factors that are going to determine whether you pop out, whether you raise what you think might be a continuation bet? For me, number one is the texture of the flop, isn't it?
Yes. Actually, funny enough, it's not my number one, but that's definitely very high up there.
What's your number one?
My number one is the player.
Okay.
Oh, look at this. Aces versus ace queen. Is L Pig going to get away from this?
This is
I
precisely
think he's
the
good
kind of
enough
bet that
to.
we can put down.
I think he's good enough to get away from... Oh, tease.
Here's another queen. No. Okay, so number one is the player.
Well, because I'll tell you why. Because I believe that in internet poker,
Yeah.
I think it's actually harder to bluff people. Because I think more people tend to make bluffs in internet poker than in live poker.
Okay, yes.
Because it's easier to click that button than it is to push chips in the middle.
Sure.
I think because of that, more people call in internet poker. Because it's easier to click the call button than to push the chips in the middle.
Got you, yeah.
So those two are very important things. So be careful. I think people overbluff on the internet. So technically, I think although it goes against the grain for us a little bit, especially if we've been a live player mainly, I think probably we should be calling more bets on the internet.
Okay, yes, but you said that you might raise that.
Right. So now the continuation here is bearing that in mind, and now really my first thing is, what category is this player?
Yes.
Is he very much internet style, or is he very, very solid player? What do I know? If he's a very solid player, well then he could well put the continuation bet in. He feels it's the right play, and I might well be able to get him off the hand. So then I could probably pop in the raise against him. But also, what's his history recently? What has he been doing? So hopefully, if I have been concentrating, I'll have noticed what does he do after his raises? Does he put in bets all the time after his raises, etc., etc.? If he's been doing it a lot, well, and I think the flop shouldn't really fit his hand, I'm sure then I would put in a raise.
I wonder, it's something that it's just sparked a thought within me, James. This notion of slowing down continuation bets. Of course, we never know whether something's a continuation bet, even when we've got position. But I wonder whether the raise of a continuation bet has the best long-term expectation, or whether the call does. Because if you make a continuation bet, if you're the maker of a continuation bet, if someone calls you, you're only going to bet out on the turn if you're an idiot or if you're a strong player about what, 5–10% of the time. Well, if you make a continuation bet on the flop,
yes,
if someone calls you,
yes,
and you feel the game is up,
yes,
it's going to be less than 10% of the time that you feel that everything's right for you to be able to win this on the turn. Yeah. So a call of a continuation bet on the flop is almost always going to slow your opponent down. He's going to check the turn and he's going to allow you to take it for a bet on the turn. Yeah? If they bet out on the turn, you can be fairly sure that continuation bet, quotes unquote, was not a continuation bet, but a value bet. So I'm wondering whether the raise that exposes you to a re-raise or a very disguising and very defensive, effectively defensive call on the flop, I'm wondering whether that's the best play or whether the best defence against continuation bets is actually to call on the flop. I'm just trying to project myself into the situation of someone who makes a continuation bet.
Right. The thing is, if you're playing this, and we're talking about the situation where you've called with a pair, a small pair in late position.
Yeah.
We've got to really think in our minds, he's got 2 overcards. Can we afford to let him draw for those 2 overcards? And we don't even know if he's hit them or not.
Yeah.
Because now the next card comes. If he does bet, we probably have to pass.
Okay, okay.
So now he can actually bluff us.
Yeah.
Or he can have hit his card, or we don't know where we are. And that's the main thing. So it now goes back to the premise of, in poker, it's generally best to know where we are. Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, there's another principle that I'm always very keen on in poker, which is the raise that is definitely going to be called, yeah, is effectively like a big call. Right? In other words, it's not going to have the purpose of elimination. It may get more money into the pot when you're ahead, but the raise that is definitely going to be called is effectively like a big put call. In other words, it hasn't extracted information. So if someone bets on a continuation bet with overcards and you raise it, a lot of people who make continuation bets and you raise, let's say, 2 times the bet, or 3 times
3 times the bet,
yeah. I don't mean you raise the value of the bet back again.
He bet 10, you make it 30.
Make it 30, yeah. They put the 20 in, and they put the 20 in because of pride, don't they? Very few players who make that continuation bet, very few internet players.
So what's he do in the next round of betting?
What does he do in the next round of betting? Well,
if he's put it in with pride, he checks the next round of betting.
Yeah, that's right. But he's going to check the next round of betting if you call as well. So you've got exactly the same result, but with less cost and less exposure, haven't you?
No, because you've actually charged him. You've had you've had equity in this situation.
Yeah,
he's called with pride. He's put $20 in there for pride's sake, and you're winning the hand.
Yeah, you're right.
So you've gained equity.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that.
If he's definitely continuation betting. However, my point was based on the fact that if he's not, or rather, no.
And if he's not, you get out of the.
Right, but we don't know. My point is based on the fact that given that we don't know, given that there's a 30% chance that he's continuation betting, and on average, right, given no knowledge of the player, no knowledge of the situation, 30% chance he's continuation betting and 70% chance that he's value betting in the event of a bet. And when you decide that he's continuation betting, James, you've got to have a lot of experience and knowledge of that player to turn that 30% into an 80% likelihood, haven't you?
I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
If he's continuation betting,
yes,
and he's now raised,
yes,
and what percentage?
When?
After he's bet. So the guy's made a continuation bet of $10.
Yes.
Now the player's made it $30.
We've made it $30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What percentage of the time does the guy who's got nothing call? The raise.
I think he calls the raise a high percentage of the time. But if he bets 10 and we make it 30,
yeah.
I think he does put the extra 20 in a high percentage of the time.
Really?
Yeah, I do, yeah, definitely. Because of pride.
Well, we should definitely do it then.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Because he's 2-1 against to have hit his hand.
Exactly. Hang on, but James.
Yeah.
If he's definitely continuation betting, that is the correct thing to do. Right, so let's not confuse ourselves here. My point is based on the concept that we don't know that he's continuation betting.
No.
If we were up in the blimp and we saw his continuation betting, we'd know the correct thing to do was to raise him. Because I do think he would call it most of the time. Because I don't think the players like to be bet off hands on the flop when they're bluffing. Yeah. By the river, when the bet gets so big that it's jeopardising their stack or place in the tournament or what have you, even a numpty knows he's got to put it down. But on the flop, people don't like that. It's an offence to their male pride. So you're absolutely right. What I'm saying is, I would say, ceteris paribus, we don't know anything about this player. We've just come to this table on a tournament, right? He raises before the flop. We call on the button. The flop comes down. Texture of the flop is important. But across a whole range of flops, I reckon there's only about a 30% chance that when he bets out, it's actually a continuation bet. Yeah?
Right.
In other words, most of the time, it's not going to be a continuation bet. Now, I know that a player of your standard...
Stop.
Yes.
Only 30% of the time it's a continuation bet?
I think so, yes.
Well, he's raised with 2 big cards.
Yeah, but he's going to check.
He's 2-1 against...
He's not going to bet every time.
Oh, right.
He's going to check a lot of the time.
OK.
So when he bets, I think about 30% of the time it's a pure continuation bet. Maybe about 20% of the time it's a semi-bluff, and about 50% of the time he's got something.
OK, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes. And what I'd say is, can I just finish? Well, I'm flattering you, because I'm saying a player of your calibre can turn that 30% into an 80% certainty, because you'll have a much better read on this player and the texture of the flop, and you'll be able to fold it more often. In other words, you'll know to a much greater certainty whether it's a continuation bet or not. That's the point that I'm making.
Right.
And therefore you're more able to raise. And if you don't have that knowledge, I think a call is a better defensive strategy, because it's going to more often, across the board, without any read on this player, it's more often going to be a bet with something.
I've got an email here from
finished.
you. Dear Caspar, I've just made a continuation bet. I didn't have anything at all, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And my opponent has just raised me 3 times my bet.
Yeah.
What should I do?
I'd fold.
Yes.
Definitely.
So, I don't think so many... I think more people do fold on
I've got another email. No, just because we know they should doesn't mean to say they do.
We've got too much
spoken
night live.
Right, we know. We're in the middle of an argument. My email says... what was my email saying?
Actually,
my email says...
Actually,
I've just called
you do look a bit like Mark.
I've got an email. It says, I've just called a raise from the button, right? My opponent has bet out. Is he continuation betting? I reckon there's about a 30% chance he is. What do you reckon?
I'm just going to laugh. It's an interesting subject.
It is. What would be nice is if we have a little think about what are the chances that when someone...
In fact, we're going to be monitoring it tonight.
Well, OK, let's do that.
We're going to monitor it.
Let's have a look.
We're going to be on our toes.
Ken keeps adding to this monster email about implied odds, so let's just read
is this
one
the same one, or is it another one?
Yeah, one more little bit about this. In fact, no, we'll leave the email for now, right? In the last minute, before we go to the break, let's just discuss this. Why is Dan Harrington so obsessed with pot odds when discussing no-limit poker? My argument would be because Dan Harrington is more often playing better players against whom you get less implied odds. But on internet poker, playing the internet numpties, you get much higher implied odds, and therefore they play a greater part of our decisions. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think because he's playing a high calibre of player there, and so therefore his guideline... But I think the point is he wants to really push forward that the game is a game of odds, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And I think he actually wants to push forward that people actually pass a lot of hands where in fact they're getting great odds. And they're actually giving up favourable, equitable situations. And I think he's trying to stress that.
Okay.
So I think that is probably the one thing he wants to really push.
Okay, I would still say then he should bring in implied odds because that would actually enhance his argument. Maybe he's going to do that in Volume 3.
Volume 3 is on its way.
Folks, this is a lot of fun. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. Do continue to get your emails and texts in asking us questions about implied odds and this subject of continuation bets, which has cropped up, and we will do our very best to answer them. We're going to be back after these messages from our sponsors. See you very soon. Take care. Hi folks, it's that time of the show you all love. James is going to depart for a short while to play Beat the Presenter. Well, hopefully a long while, because it'll hopefully be a big win and more money for the kiddies. And you're stuck with me, I'm afraid, taking you through till the wee hours. So, I'm going to start with a couple of emails. Let's see what we've got in the email kitty. Right, well, let's go back to some Ken Snappett stuff when it's talking about implied odds, and we will come back to get James's thoughts on this later on. Fantastic first part of the show. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Fantastic to get James's thoughts on some different things. I love talking with James. I hope you love hearing with it. So, are pot odds really more important in limit? Yes. Is the answer to that, Ken? Definitely. Let's try and get through some of these questions. Pot odds are definitely much more important than limit. In limit, implied odds, you could argue, are really not that big an issue at all. You've got to be playing, well, they're just not going to be that great. You know, unless, sorry, I'm thinking slightly on my feet here, but unless we're talking, as we talked about yesterday, a low limit game of limit poker where there are a large number of players. Now, at that point, your implied odds become huge because, of course, you get 6, 7, 8 players seeing the flop. And once you get that, the pot becomes so big that they all become correct to call. My age-old point about implicit collusion that I know a lot of you have picked up on. And then, okay, well, at that point, then implied odds can become really great. But if you're playing a high to mid-limit game of limit poker or a short-handed game of limit poker, your implied odds are tiny. And calling with hands for implied odd value is very bad. That doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't be raising with trash hands in a short-handed game of limit poker for fold equity because of the increased size of the gap. But in limit poker, implied odds are much smaller part. Okay, hands good for implied odds and hands bad for implied odds, e.g. straights good, flushes bad. Right, well, another bad hand for implied odds are aces, kings, and ace-king. Why? Because you're raising aggressively with them before the flop. And so if you raise aggressively with them before the flop and an ace comes down, then you've exposed that hand. So that's a very bad hand for implied odds. Unless, of course, as Ken points out later on in point number 4, slow playing big hands for implied odds. Could slow playing ace, ace, king, king be a way for a tight player to get good implied odds as they won't believe you have it? Yes, there's a big question mark as to whether a good tight player should be slow playing those hands, because if he's a tight player, he does want to maximise the amount of money that comes in the pot initially with those hands. But slow playing ace, ace, king, king in a loose game of limit hold'em, for example, or even a loose game of no limit hold'em where a lot of players are seeing the flop, can be a great way to get implied odds, because what we're looking to do with those hands then definitely, and this is so key, folks, is to trip up on the flop or even make full houses by the turn. And I think this is a really important point which has been said many times in different contexts, but let's just make it really clear now. The number of players that see the flop and or the number of players that are dealt in at the beginning of a hand has a massive bearing on how we rate and value and weight the strength of our hands from there on in. In other words, 3 of a kind, I'd say 2 pairs in a game where 6 players are seeing the flop is a much less strong hand than in a game where 2 players see the flop. Top pair is actually the classic example, is a pretty weak hand where 6 players see the flop, whereas when 2 players see the flop, and even where 3 players see the flop, it's still a good, strong holding that should be played aggressively. Now, of course, poker is a game of uncertainties, and therefore, top pair could be an absolute monster with 6 players seeing the flop. It could be the outright winner by a long way, and you could be a fool to bet it. but we're not playing in a game of certainties. We're playing in a game of probabilities. We're playing in a game of averages, where we try and use our read on individual players and situations and the psychologies to weight the generic percentages to give us a long-term edge. But I would say that in general, this shouldn't detract from the notion that ace, ace and king, king should be raising hands. They're raising hands, they have poor implied odds, they should be played with small stacks and enjoyed for the benefit that they give us in that sense. I love James's point about stack size being seen as a license to allow us to play different hands in different ways. We're going to come back to that later when James is back in the conversation. But that's a few of Ken's many points answered for now. We're going to get through them again later on. Ken, keep it interactive. Keep your emails coming in. The text, of course, 84222, and do text poker before you start. And it is poker, or you may find yourself voting to evict Pete. That's 84222. And emails poker@pokernightllive.co.uk, poker@pokernightllive.co.uk. This summer, you've got Poker Night Live, Big Brother, and the World Cup. It's going to be hard to see how you're going to get any work done, really. Let's get back to a game. How you doing, James?
I'm still there.
Good. So this is a $5 sit and go. James, for anyone who's interested, is playing in a $20, $30?
$30, I think.
$30 sit and go. And James, I understand, had a little second place finish with $50 sit and go the other day, so are you creeping up on me?
Oh, I've got a long way to go. You've,
I'm not sure.
No,
I've only got about $350 in my account.
You've got a good record.
It's all for the kids.
Very good record.
So, what have we got here? This $5 sit and go. Do my Michelle impression, ready? We've got Eldias, we've got Uguna, we've got Lisa, Ballard, Puck Jr., Morrison, Everbright and Wales Forever. She'll kill me for that.
Did Michelle teach you to do that?
Yeah.
You picked it up well.
Thank you.
Go on, read the names out
She's taught me everything I know. I'll do it in reverse order, ready?
Yeah.
Wales Forever, Everbright, Morrison, Puck Jr., Ballard, Lisa, Uguna and Eldias.
Very good.
Thank you. Our chip leader at the moment is Everbright, and our short stack is Lisa. Is that Lisab? Lisa B. Lisa B1. Lisa B1.
Lisa B1.
Come on, folks, we need some more emails at the moment. We know you're out there. You should be out there. You should be enjoying this red-hot poker chat night with me and James. Drilling down the concept of implied odds, asking ourselves how many bets we need in our stack to call with small pairs on the button, asking ourselves the likelihood of a player betting out from middle position being a continuation bet. We want your thoughts and feelings on this, because these pro nights on Poker Night Live I see more and more as nights where we need to get to answers. We've thrown around the issues until we're blue in the face. It's important to drill them down as Uguna correctly moves all in with his trips, trying to close it down. Had a lot of players on the flop there, had a goodly amount in the pot to win, and gets a lovely crying call from Puck Jr., who didn't even have two pairs and still called it down. When Uguna goes in with that many players, of course you don't know that he's got anything, Puck, but we can say that there is a very good likelihood that he has two pairs, three of a kind, or even ace-king to outkick us. As heartbreaking as that is, we have to throw it away, my friend. So, we're watching a $5 sit and go at the moment, where they only start off with 1,000 in chips. That's very different to this $30 sit and go, where they start off with 2,000 in chips. Gives you a whole extra 12 hands in which to splash about, as regular viewers will know that I call it, which appropriately enough is another name for utilising those implied odds. I hope we addressed... Well, we didn't really address, actually. James is busy now, but it was Tilt78 who asked about how you protect yourself against those small pocket pairs from taking your stack. Of course, one of the ways is you don't play with a big stack. Now, I know that sounds a cop-out, but if it's a cash game, that's one of the arguments for people like Barry Greenstein playing small stacks. And in fact, I can't remember who it was I was talking to. I think it was Malcolm that was saying that as we see Wales Forever moving all in with $30 in the pot with his ace-jack, I think it's probably worth a quick explanation of why that's a very bad play. There are only $30 in the pot and you're suddenly putting 880 in to win them. What that means is that you are exposing 880 of your chips just to win 30. So you have a ridiculously small win percentage, therefore ridiculously awful odds. And by doing that with an ace-jack, you're effectively exposing yourself to be only called when you are beaten. So any hands that are worse than you will definitely fold, which is not what you want. And any hands that are definitely significantly better than you, well, obviously ace-queen will fold as well. But the hands that are better than you, especially aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace-kings, suited, will call. They'll call Wales Forever particularly because he's now developing a reputation as someone who's going all in with very bad cards, which means that he will be called down. So the whole move backfires in on itself. And LDS, whilst you don't like the fact that Wales Forever is going all in all the time, if you're going to pay him off with your Queen Jack, I'm sorry my friend, but you are going to be a loser in poker. I know that it's painful when someone moves all in, but in fact that's a classic case of the maniac annoying everybody, and you want to pick your spots to call him down. All right, he hit a fluky full house, but he had you beaten before the flop, and I'm afraid Queen Jack is not the hand to certainly not call a maniac with, and definitely not risk your position in a tournament with. So going to tilt 7-8, when you, he says, you have my last two beats were from small pocket pairs by my opponent making trips and quads. How do we spot them? The first thing to understand about that as a bad beat, tilt 7-8, is that they were going to win 20% of the time against you anyway. And I just don't think that a 1 in 5 chance counts as a bad beat story. Things that are 4 to 1 happen all the time. You know, it's not nice, it's not pleasant. And the big question that we need to ask ourselves, tilt 7-8, is were you all in before the flop? In which case, there's nothing that you can do to stop pocket players beating you. You're giving yourself a good chance of winning that particular hand. Or did they extract their winnings on the flop when you had an overpair and they had trips? Now, what I'll say about this is the following. First of all, if that happens, it is possible that you can lay your hand down. If you have an overpair to the board in that situation, it is going to be hard to lay your hands down heads up. I'm not saying impossible, but if you've only got 10, 15 times the big blind in your stack and you've raised and someone calls and the flop comes down and you've got an overpair to the board and you bet out and someone raises you, that is a good lay down. And unless that person is a really tight player, you can be forgiven for not laying that hand down. However, now let's say you've got 50, 60, 70 times the big blind in your stack, and you raise and someone calls and the flop comes down and you've got an overpair to the board and you bet out and he re-raises you, and you might want to raise him back, and now he moves all in. Because that's the kind of move that would happen there with that many bets. Now you can put it down, because he's got 1 of 2 or 3 hands. He's got 2 pairs, he's got a bigger pocket pair that he was frustratingly slow playing, he's got trips. And in that situation, you don't have a decision. You're sitting there saying to yourself, what if he hasn't got any of those things? But your mind is so fixated on the what if he hasn't got any of those things that what it's not doing is creating that decision tree, which is what's the likelihood of him not having a hand that beats me at the moment. I mean, Nick doesn't coin the phrase, what are you beating, for nothing. That phrase, what are you beating, is one of the most important questions you can ask yourself in poker, because it's basically, what hands are you beating and what are the likelihood of you beating it? and astute viewers will notice that more and more at the moment I'm trying to bring in this question of likelihoods into our decision-making in poker, because I think that most of you regular players have really got the hang of what decisions you're trying to make. I think the issue now is starting to add some percentages to those questions. So for example, I'm going to say that if someone bets, because bear in mind they won't always bet, on a flop, what percentage chance is it a continuation bet? Well, it does completely depend on the texture of the flop. It does completely depend on the psychological makeup and profile and betting patterns of that player. But if we had to say generically, I'm going to start from 30%. If the flop comes 2-4-8 and they bet out, then I would say the chance of it being a continuation bet is slightly higher. In other words, it's much more likely they've got bigger cards. And if you've got a pair of fives, and certainly if you've hit your trips, then it's more likely that it's a continuation bet compared to what you have. But if the flop comes down ace, king, 10, and they bet out, it's down to 25, 20, 18% chance that it's continuation bet. In other words, it's much more likely that the raiser has hit their flop with that bet. It may be that the flop has come down ace, king, 10, and they've got a pair of queens. And then you might ask yourself, well, is that a continuation bet or not? Because if someone bet into you and you had a pair of queens and the board read ace, king, 10, you'd either raise or fold. You certainly wouldn't be calling it, and you would only raise if that player was the kind of player who might be betting, ironically enough, making a continuation bet. But we do have to start putting percentages onto our psychological reads, I think, because only by doing that can we start to create the decision trees which lie at the heart of poker. Now look at this hand. Oh, it's all folded. Morrison there, having the straight, trying to extract the maximum value from it, and not getting it. So email from Tilt78. How do you play them? How do you get away from those situations? You know, at the end of the day, you have to take into account what the betting patterns of your opponent are, and treating your opponent's bet as a tell. However, and James, you've got 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a straight question?
Yes.
If you've got a big pair,
Yep.
and your opponent has a small pair and he hits trips,
Yep.
and you lose money in that situation, that doesn't mean you've played badly, does it?
I think there is something away you can do along the way, actually.
Okay, good.
You've probably asked a question before the flop, and he's there. You've probably asked a question on the flop, and he's there. And so now you say, what have I got? Well, I've got one pair.
Yeah.
Well, why is he still there? Maybe you've got
but
ace,
he doesn't
king.
know you've got a pair.
No, but you know you've got a pair. You've got ace,
pair.
king, maybe, and you've hit the ace in the flop. And you say, well, why does he still want to call me? I've raised it, I've bet it. If there's a time comes in the pot where I feel I've walked into a head-on collision, I might actually now revert to check and calling. And the reason is I'm less likely to lose all my chips now.
I completely agree.
And because if the guy, I've now checked, it looks given a sign of weakness. Now the guy, if he's got trips, says, oh goodness, I thought he had a hand. How am I going to get paid here? So now he tries to price it in such a way that he's going to get paid from me. So that makes the whole thing cheaper. Now supposing the guy hasn't got anything, if on the end there I check again, it might open the door for him to put in a bluff if he hasn't got anything himself. And now, of course, I'm calling it because I'm checking calling, so I will capture some of the bluffs. So if you take the whole package together, one package, I lose less than I would do if I was playing it aggressively without thinking of anything, because I'm leaving it to him to charge me the price. That would be definitely less than I'll pay myself voluntarily. Number two, I recoup money when I snap up some of his bluffs.
Jolly good.
Back to him again.
No, that's great. Excellent. I want to.
Posh says he might try it. Laugh out loud.
And that's where this show becomes the most interactive on British television.
Did you like it, Posh, or not?
Email from Ken Snappett here. He says, don't want to monopolise on this subject, but it's something I really want to get to understand, so I'll limit it to this last email. Let me just interject there, Ken, and say, stop that nonsense. This whole show is for people to ask questions and get answers as we interject with live internet poker. So please, please, please don't hold back on the emails. I think everyone's agreed that your emails on this subject are opening up some fascinating discussions, some relevant, some irrelevant. So there's no question of you limiting it to this one, please, mate. I've noticed, Ken, that you have made your emails shorter than the early days of when I used to do this show, when an email from Ken Snappett used to involve me putting on my reading glasses, and I've got 20/20 vision, so... He said, would James please explain or post on the forum his rationale and calculations for saying you'd like the other player and yourself to have 33 times the bet? All right, we'll come to that in a minute, mate. He's just slightly tied up at the moment. And number 2, on that subject, would this change if there were 2 players in the pot, or you think someone to your left will also call? OK, Ken, we'll definitely come back to that. I've got my own ideas as to why, but I'm not going to do that without James. So, let's have a look at a pair of 9s being re-raised by Uguna. And the old classic Holden matchup. Poor old Morrison. Uguna's hit his king, needs a 9, doesn't get it. We say goodbye to Morrison. I don't feel he's done anything catastrophic there. But at the same time, it's one of those borderline decisions where I personally would have erred on laying it down, because the opportunity cost principle, which I've been discussing in a couple of shows before now, and which I'm going to hold back again until James joins us, until after his sit and go. So it's 40-80. Uguna puts in a call with 3,250 in his stack, which means he has 40 big blinds, which means he's figuring that I can take some risks here. However, I personally would have bet that Uguna with 2 players. It's a low sort of a flop. It's a shame that Lisa carried on checking out there. And that hand played quite bizarrely, actually. It all played nicely for Uguna in terms of cards, but not in terms of actions, which proves the point that I'm banging on about a lot at the moment, which is there are 3 main uncertainties in poker. Number 1 is your opponent's cards, number 2 is the cards to come, and number 3 is what your opponents will do in reaction to what you do. And actually isn't a 4th, though much less important uncertainty, which is actually what you'll do in response to your opponent. And I say that because obviously we could carry on going there into infinity, but what you'll do in response to your opponent is something that's within your circle of influence, for those Stephen Covey fans, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's something you can control, apparently, but only in the same way that you can control whether you get angry when you can't work the DVD player, or whether you get happy when someone says, I love you. Yes, those emotional responses are in your control, but sometimes you feel like you're out of control in those situations. So how much control are you going to have over your responses to different situations? And that's something that we talk about in poker, but we never really refer to as one of the uncertainties. In actual fact, if you don't make your flush by the river, here's an interesting question. What's the probability that you will make a bluff bet? Now, it's completely in your control, but what's the probability? You can say, well, there's a 100% probability that I'll make a bluff bet in that event to try and win the pot. In the event that I, in these possible scenarios, I will 100% make that bluff bet. But actually, Caro's law of loose wiring demonstrates to us, and we've all been victim of this, I'm sure, where we do something, we sit there and we think, now, why did I do that? I know that I shouldn't have done that. Another situation is if you don't make your flush and someone bets out at you, what's the probability that you'll call them down? Because if you knew that probability, or if you knew one thing or other as a certainty, then there'd be no thinking time, would there? In actual fact, a lot of the things that we do that seem to be in our control actually have a probability. And chaos theoreticians will be able to talk about that in terms of the literally the subatomic firings that go on within our minds. Not something that I have a great deal of knowledge about. As we see, 4 to a straight flush, 10 Jack Queen King, falling for Everbright, and poor old Everbright there, betting out and losing it. Yes, mate.
What's the probability that your next girlfriend will be Oriental?
It's pretty high.
Well, give us a figure.
Do you know what I wouldn't like to say? Live on air and all that.
Come on. You're looking uncomfortable, Caspar.
Yeah, I'm feeling quite uncomfortable, actually. I've sort of come out in an instant cold sweat.
Got a bit of powder behind the computer if you really...
If you really want to know, James, actually the probability at the moment is quite low. But let's just leave it at that, shall we? We'll just leave it at that. Because, you know, people are watching, people with agendas and opinions and...
What's the next probability? Probability should be Y too young, Fish and Chips says.
Yes. No, way too young. Yeah, Chinese girl she was way too young. Ever bright there, flopping the top pair. Ace Queen, snap it. A hand with very bad implied odds. Dr. Tom's favourite example of the inverse implied odds. A hand that will lose a lot when it's beaten by Ace King and win a little when it's better than a low ace or a pair of jacks when an ace is on the board. Because people will fold their low aces and fold their pair of jacks, but it's very hard to lay down Ace Queen to Ace King, or a better kicker. So that a hand with very low implied odds, but that doesn't make it unplayable in poker. It just means that we play certain hands in certain situations, and as I am bored of hearing myself say, in fact, this is the next level, I think, of poker knowledge and discipline that we need to get to, but I don't want to continue these implied odds conversations too much without James by my side, because it's all about the conversation. Now, Uguna there, making a big all-in move from the big blind with King-Queen suited. Personally, I'm not doing that, I've got to be honest. Was he the big blind? Yeah, he was the big blind. But the blind's just gone up. Sorry, James, don't worry, don't let it distract you.
No, I just like to have a little glance at what's going on.
I'm fairly sure that he was in the big blind there and the blinds were 40-80 and there was a first position raise for 160 and he was with King-Queen suited. Now, if he had a much smaller stack and the blinds were coming around and they were eating him up and he was worried, so if the blinds were already 160, 320 or 320, 640 at that point, then that is definitely a nice, interesting time to move all in. But Uguna for me at the moment, moving all in far too often. We've just given Ballard their ridiculous situation to call with his ace-5. It's all worked out nicely for Uguna, and so I'm very happy for him. But for me, exposing himself too much there, in situations when we don't need to. When the blinds get higher, you'll see me move in, once I've got less than 10 times the big blind, which is very often the case in the later stage of these tournaments, absolutely, I'm all in a lot. In situations when I'm picking my spots. When am I picking my spots? When I believe I've got high fold equity, in other words, there's a high likelihood that the person will fold to me, and when I believe that the remaining call equity still looks good to give me a good overall equity. But I'm still only doing that Uguna with more money. Less money.
Your mum told you never to pick your spots, Caspar.
I know she did. She did, for what it was worth. I found it quite satisfying picking spots. There's always a sense of achievement when you pick a spot, isn't there?
Oh no.
Lisa B here with the best hands in all possible ways. The flush draw. What is Everbright going to read Lisa for? Can't do anything at all. 2 pairs on the board, so Lisa B's flush draw has been flushed down the toilet. It is now worthless. And Lisa likely to just... Well, it's a split pot. It's a split pot. Can Lisa call that? Good bet from Everbright. Lovely, lovely play. It's not a split pot. Hush your mouth, Caspar. So, Everbright out-kicked here. Uguna now just calling. And so, now I don't want to be cruel, folks. Don't want to be cruel. But Uguna making a number of quite weird plays for me. He's a chip leader, that's great. But as I say, on many occasions, some players are borderline madness genius, and some plays are just madness, and some plays are slightly just sort of ambiguous, neither one thing really nor the other. And it takes a number of extreme plays to be for me to categorise a player completely. But I am categorising Aguna at this time, and I'm categorising him as a player who's making too many mistakes for me to worry about as a player. That doesn't mean to say that he won't do some things inadvertently correctly, but he's making too many mistakes for me to worry about. So let's just keep our eye on him. As the game plays out. Pair of kings for Lisa B. Raises it up to 2 times the big blind. I would definitely... Sorry, folks.
Be hard to disguise it. It wasn't particularly good news.
Quick question. Yeah. Quick question about pot limit hold'em or
Okay.
PL hold'em. I'm finding that I'm losing a lot at no limit hold'em against all ins because of the levels I play at. 5 cent, 10 cent, and 10 cent, 20 cent. You get people buying in for the minimum, hoping to get lucky by going all in all the time. But I found that with pot limit, these people don't affect my play much as they can't push in pre-flop all the time. But I need some help at this. What sort of hands shall I play? Shall I play a tight game, as in no limit cash games, with mixes of ace, king, queen, jack, and 10, only dependent on position and small pairs? How aggressive shall I be? Shall I raise the pot every hand I enter with a good hand? This is from Tomo. I abstain from this, James, because I'm a donkey when it comes to pot limit. So what are your thoughts and feelings?
Well, there's no set plan. There's no easy sort of just click the buttons and that's it. Basically, you've got to look at the game, and it's the makeup of the game. And what is the style of the game? Is it a passive game? Is it an aggressive game? This is what we've got to look at. Because in poker, it's, as I said many times, it's often right to be, or normally right to be a contrarian. And if it's a passive game, well then you can be the one who is the aggressor. And you can be, you know, popping in far more pre-flop raises, etc., and being the aggressor and pushing people off hands. Because if they're very passive, they're only going to be there once they've connected. So you'll be able to steal lots and lots of small pots. Plus, once the guy doesn't go away, thank you very much, it's like a red light flashing. It's easy for you not to pay him off. That's in the passive game.
Let's talk about pot limit in relation to implied odds, because all I know about pot limit is that it has to be a game where implied odds feature a very high part of it. It's a game where it's very often going to be the case where you get in cheap and you make a lot of money by the river. The whole game is about the size of the bets escalating exponentially throughout the betting streets.
Yes.
So does that make it the quintessential implied odds game, and what does that mean, do you think?
I don't think it does make it the actual best implied odds game.
Right.
Because you might be able to get all your chips in there.
Right.
Because
sure.
The way of the betting and of the pot. Because basically, if you've connected, you're probably now trying to slow play, and by virtue of slow playing, the pot, of course, isn't getting any bigger. So it's not the best game for implied odds in that sense, just because you can't get the money in there.
Let's just go back. You say if you connected, you're probably trying to slow play? Is that what you
No,
said?
I said once you've connected, maybe you're trying to slow play.
Okay,
You've connected with your trips.
Yes.
So probably you're slow playing, and maybe then if your opponent doesn't bet too much, he's controlling the size of the pot.
Now,
you mightn't be able to get all your chips in.
Let me ask you a question, James. I'm genuinely asking this because
Yes.
I've never understood pot limit. I don't know why. By the way, I have a lot of respect for pot limit and pot limit players.
I think it's a great game.
Yeah, okay. So, actually, pot limit is the game that I played a long time ago in Newcastle when I just didn't like it at all. In a casino that I didn't like, in a structure that didn't suit me, etc., etc. And I had two sort of teachers of pot limit. One was TJ Cloutier through his book with Tom McAvoy, and the other was Nick Wellthall in my ear incessantly. And basically, Nick adhered to what TJ said, and this is the days where I felt that both of us just used to read things too often. It's just a scourge of the poker player, I think, that you read something or we say something
and want to put it into
still.
practice.
Yeah, well, no, and then you do it without understanding why. And the phrase of TJ's that Nick used to advocate strongly, and therefore I used to conform to, was when you have a good hand, bet the pot, because when you have a good hand, you want to maximise the money in the pot and the size of the bet and all the rest of it. And Nick thought it was the worst thing that you could do was to slow play. Well, actually, pot limit is quite a trappy game, isn't it? Or can be quite a trappy game when played at the big limits. So, you know, I know there's no simple answer to this, but if someone's sitting there thinking, if I've got a good hand in pot limit, should I do this slow playing, which seems to be highly effective, or should I be betting big to increase the size of the pot and therefore the size of the bets? What's the answer?
Well, in pot limit, it leaves the door open for pot building. So basically, you can now, when you're in position, sometimes you can say, if there's a lot of people in the pot, you can basically pot build. You can actually say, well, if I connect here, I really want to get paid. So now you can actually be putting a bet in there just basically to get the pot up to the size you want it to be.
On the come?
Possibly, because if there's enough people there, you're getting odds anyway.
Okay.
So supposing you're on a nut flush draw, well, you're approximately 2 to 1 to make your flush by the river.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got lots of company in the pot and they're prepared just to call you, you're getting value. Because if there's 4 of them there, they're putting 4 lots of money in there and you're only 2 to 1 against to make you flush.
Yeah.
So you're on the right side of this anyway, and you're pot building. And what you're doing is you're getting this pot bigger and bigger, and you're looking at it in relation to the size of your stack. And maybe you now get to the size where you say, right, I can get all my money in here. And if I'm lucky enough to have walked in up against the king flush, I could get all my money in the pot here. So you're looking ahead at that possible juicy situation.
Yeah.
So in pot limit, you very much control the size of the game.
Yes.
So therefore, when you're making moves, you don't do it with a big bet, maybe. You can make moves with smaller bets because it's harder for anyone to hurt you as much.
Yeah.
So this is what's in your mind all the time in pot limit. You're looking ahead. You're looking at the possible eventualities of the hand, the possible way it's going to break down. And this is one of the things you're thinking about in pot limit.
Okay, okay. I'm going to...
Whereas in the possible thing in no limit,
yes,
for example, whatever happens, it sort of lends itself more to slow playing.
Yeah.
Because slow play, you've disguised where you are, maybe. The other guy suddenly connects and makes 2 pair, decides to make a move, you come over the top, you can't put it down, wallop, you've got all your money in.
Yeah.
There was no planning needed.
Yeah.
All you had to do was to be deceptive along the way.
Yes.
And then you're given the license to be able to get all your chips in the middle.
Yeah.
In one fell swoop.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
So that's why, in my mind, that no limit is better for implied odds, because you don't have to wangle away to get your chips in as well.
Okay.
We've already said what a problem it is to get our implied odds. Got to hit, he's got to have a hand, then he's got to be not too frightened, and then he's got to pay me off. Well, now if you say, now I've got to build a pot up so I can get my chips in, it's another obstacle, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think, to me, the no limit lends itself more to implied odds.
Okay.
What do you feel?
Well, that's changed my thinking on it to a certain extent.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that
genuinely.
good?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's always good. Let's have a quick look at the what might be the end of this game. No, Lisa has hit her ace, and Guna, who I've been slagging off, and I'm sorry for being cruel, is making the top 2, but he's outchipped by 3 to 1 in these final stages. Let's see how this final thing plays out, but we're going to come right back to implied odds, James.
He's happy anyway. Henri's staying. He doesn't mind.
Do you think he's just playing without fear?
Oh, he doesn't care. Henri's staying. His life is sweet. We lost the final, but Henri's staying. It's wiped the slate clean.
Good. Well,
Laguna's happy.
Hopefully that will compensate for his second place.
Yeah, he doesn't matter. He's singing anyway.
The blinds at that point were 640, 120, 1,200, so... became a bit of a crapshoot by that stage. Anyway, okay, now, here's what I want to do.
Right, you said you changed your mind.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. I think I think there's two factors. There's two factors at stake. In fact, what I want to do in the time between now and the break, we'll have a big old chat, right, about what contributes to implied odds. So before we can say whether they're going to make a hand playable or not, we're going to say what contributes to them. And I think what you just said about no limit and pot limit is very interesting because it makes the distinction interesting. One of the things that contributes to implied odds is how cheap it is to get in right now. Yeah, and in pot limit, it's more likely to be cheap to get in right now.
Right.
Okay, because people are going to be less able to make a big all-in or a big bet behind you. Very often a hand in pot limit will be a lot of callers before the flop.
Right.
So that's one thing that would contribute to implied odds in pot limit. However, as you say, the second element of pot limits, second element of implied odds is how big a bet can you get on the end. And in no limit, there is literally no limit to the size of that bet you can get on the end.
Yep.
And that means that your potential implied odds are basically the size of the bigger of the two stacks in a heads-up confrontation. So that would imply that no limit has the implied odds. So anyway, rather than get bogged down in actually a discussion between which of those two games has them, so we've isolated the different elements from each one, let's have a think about what contributes to implied odds. What are the factors? For me, there are two. What's the perfect player you want to be playing in order to extract implied odds? He's a player who will not bet against you, because with anything, right, I'm talking about a theoretical player, because if he won't bet against you with anything, no, I'll take that back.
You don't want that, do you?
No, you don't want that, do you? No, you want him to bet out if he's got something, so you know where you are, as you always put it. But what we do want is we don't want a player who's going to make a continuation bet. We don't want a player who's going to have a little...
You don't want to play who makes...
No, I don't think so. No. We don't want a player who's going to bet if, like, in a situation where we've got a draw...
let's just stop quickly.
Well, let me just finish, and then you can pull it apart. And I think we want a player who will pay you off by the end. In other words, when you make your hand, a theoretical player is whatever you bet when you've got it, he'll pay you off. But yeah, I don't think we want a player who's going to bet too much between then and then, because that's going to reduce what Slansky and Mammoth call our effective odds, isn't it? If it's going to cost us a lot of money on the way in order to extract those implied odds, it reduces the number of hands we can play now. I think theoretically, if you were playing with a player who wouldn't bet at all against you and only pay you off on the end, you could play 7-2 till your heart's content.
Okay.
Argue with it, though.
No, I'm not arguing with it. It's fine. I think the one thing I really want is I want the person who thinks that the top pair is the crown jewels. That's what I want. I mean, I've got aces. I want the person who will be walking around the card room saying, I can't believe this. I've just had aces cracked again. It's just a joke, this game. Just a joke.
Do you mean top pair, or do you mean as good starting hand?
He's hit the ace or ace. He probably walks around with either hand. He doesn't mind which he talks about. He talks more about the pair of aces.
But then he's going to bet on the flop, and then it's going to cost you money on the times.
You've hit your trips.
Oh, no, but... so there we are. So in a way, then we're talking about... just coming back to the Slansky-Malmuth point about the two different kinds of implied odds. There's trips that you hit quickly.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the main ones.
And then there's
the other ones are just icing on the cake, as far as I'm concerned.
Really?
Yes, really. I think so.
Why?
Because... there's a big point
I agree
here.
with you, by the way.
Okay.
If you're talking about trips, you do want someone who's going to overrate his hand.
Yeah, and you want to hit them straight away, because when you've hit the trips later, the reason why you've been able to hit the trips later is because the guy hasn't bet, because he hasn't got anything.
Ah, yes, I know, that's what I'm saying. But you want a player who, when he hits average hands, doesn't bet, right, but will still pay you off.
Well, no,
that's what you want. You want a guy. I'm talking about a theoretical player who will pay you off on the river with ace high.
Yeah, well,
do you know what I mean?
You have to be playing St George's Hospital.
I know. But what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to create this ultimately theoretical perfect player.
You want to design your perfect player.
That's right. But then by creating that model, we can analyse what sort of player we want to push into that.
If you can create some of these and you give them lots of money, just tell me. Get these people.
You know exactly what I'm doing.
No, I know what you mean. But no. But because what I'm saying there is, I think its key is on the flop basically. The rest I really think is icing. That sort of player is pretty bad if he plays like that.
Of course. No, he doesn't exist. He doesn't exist. No, he doesn't.
But he will exist. He's somewhere.
But theoretically, if he could, he's someone who would not bet into you, but always pay you off.
Okay. So let's get to being realistic. Let's get to realism here. What could and maybe hope will happen. So that's back to hitting your trips on the flop. So now I want the guy with his big pair, and that's it. And he more or less, even if he loses, at least he's got the story. And the times he's right, he's really happy.
Okay, the reason why the theoretical player is important is this.
Okay.
Is because then we can ask ourselves, what are the factors that would contribute to that situation? Because one of the factors that will contribute to that situation is he's got as big a stack as you, or he's got the biggest stack possible, yeah? In other words, he can only pay you off at the end if he's got a big stack. So that's one of the factors.
Okay, yeah.
Another factor that's really important is that what's going to contribute to that is that your hand is as hidden as possible. Yeah, that becomes another component of implied odds. Is the more hidden your hand is. What's another factor?
I'll tell you what I want in my little. If you're going to have a theoretical player,
absolutely.
I want the guy there who says, "Ooh, why are you still there? I've raised and I've bet and all in."
Who bet into you?
Yeah, all in. I don't know where I am. All in. I want him.
Okay. Right, so a player who will all in by the river whatever, and then you can call it if you've got it and fold if you don't.
I want him, who's frustrated by the whole thing, in the end just clicks the all-in button because he can't think of anything else to do.
Okay.
And there's lots of those around. They're not a myth. You see them every day on the internet.
Okay.
So that's a guy I want then.
Okay.
In a theoretical model.
Well, one of the things I'm taking from this is, let's say you're using Poker Tracker, right?
Okay.
And let's say you've got, either a whole table of one type and a whole table of another type, or tables mixed up, right? If you've got a small pair, I want to be able to look at this guy's stats and see that he bets aggressively on the flop, don't I?
Yes.
That's what I want to see. If I've got 7-8 suited, I want to be able to look at this guy's stats and say that he is really passive, but makes big bets and big calls on the flop. Don't we? That's what we want to see.
On the flop?
Sorry, on the river.
On the river.
That's what we want to see.
Yes, that's right, yes. You want him to bet later, by the time you've made your hand, and not charge you money to try and make it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in actual fact, take it away from the theoretical Slansky mammoth where we're looking at a table. If we've got a player, and either it's in our subconscious, our heads is read, or it's Poker Tracker stats, we're looking for players who are aggressive when we've got small players, and really, really passive when we've got the connectors.
Yeah.
And that's what will give us implied odds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but...
yes or no?
Are we going to find these people?
Well, that's for them to do. I don't care.
I do. I agree.
In
principle, I'm fully with you there, Cass.
Okay, cool, excellent. Because I think by going through that theory, we're getting to answer a number of Ken's points.
But yeah,
go on.
As I said, but what we can gain from this is we can now work out what we should be doing on the other side.
Of course, absolutely.
And that's what we can gain from this.
No, and we will get to that. But here's the next thing. Here's the next thing that affects implied odds, right? Is number of players. Number of players affects implied odds, but number of players affects implied odds in a very interesting way. Because if you're heads up with a player, right, and if when you hit your hand, he will always pay you off, you can play Jack 4 with this player. If you could get in cheaply into every flop, if you're playing heads up with a guy, you could get in cheaply every single time, and he'll never raise you, and whenever you hit a hand, he'll pay you off. You can play Jack 4, and you'll play it profitably, right? And you could demonstrate that very, very simply mathematically, if you're getting 35 to 1 on every hand by the river, right? However, let's say now we've got a large number of players. These do something slightly different, because this will increase the amount of money that we're going to make when we hit the hand, but it will also increase the size of the hand that we have to make. So it'll make our hand that we hit less likely to be the winner, won't it? In other words, if we've got 7-8 suited, whereas heads up it'll make the flush, it's very unlikely to be beaten by a bigger flush. With 7 or 8 players, it makes it much more likely to be beaten by a bigger flush. So one of the things that I'm arguing here is that actually large number of players, all right, does increase our implied odds, but it does it in a way that we need to be very wary of.
Yes.
What would you say about that?
Yes, I think that's right. And I think because of that, then you've actually got to subtract from the implied odds.
That's right.
And basically, in fact, there's a lot of the time we've really got to look and say, okay, how many outs have I got? Mm-hmm. And then we've now got to say, and how many of these outs have been counterfeited by other players? Mm. Well, obviously, when you're not drawing to the nut flush, it might have been counterfeited horribly, because it might scoop all 9 outs for your flush have disappeared. Because this guy's got the better flush. You don't want to hit it. You want to actually hit your overcard. You don't know it. You want to hit your overcard instead. But so we have to look at the situation and say situations where we've got, say, well, we've got a flush draw and we think, let's say we've got even an ace. We'll say, and I think my ace there, I've got 9 for the flush and I've got 3 for the overcard. But now, have a look at the situation. Have a look at the flop and say, what happens if an ace does come? Ooh, that could well fit someone's hand and give them a straight.
Exactly. And
oh, that could well fit someone's hand and give them 2 pair. Hang on. OK, I've definitely got my 9 outs for the flush draw, because it's a nut flush draw and there's no straight flush draw on there. But that ace, I thought I had 3 overcards, but I think it's only worth 1. And now you've got to re-evaluate those outs.
That's right. And this is my big point to conclude this before we get to the break, is that if you had one player on your table who played every hand and called every hand, you could play almost anything. But implied odds usually come from a large number of players playing slightly looser, and for exactly the same reasons that James said there, that does not increase your implied odds by the amount that you need and want them to do so. So that's why implied odds are a dark art, which aren't always applicable. Good stuff. We're going to go to break now, and we'll pick this up afterwards. Thanks, folks. Hi, folks. Got a great email here from Ravinder. He says, hi, guys. Great show and great conversation too. No dumbing down here. You can't accuse us of that, can they, James?
No.
Just to go back to the conclusion we came to before the break, very, very important thing, which is that books don't teach you how to play with very high implied odds. Because, and not least, as James said, you very rarely get situations with the perfect concept of implied odds with, 8 very tight players and 1 player who'll pay you off with whatever you've got. It's a theoretical situation. But the theory is, if you did have a player like that, you could play any hand against him, just you and him, with everyone else folding all the hands, because he'd pay you off and you'd be making money till the cows come home. The situations that tend to give you high implied odds give it to you in a very specific context where there are lots of players. And as James brilliantly pointed out, within those contexts, your implied odds, ironically, they don't go down overall, but they go up in one way because lots of players, and a lot of players will pay you off, but then they come down by quite a bit because so many of your outs are taken. So when you talk about fixed limit poker, yes, your implied odds go up because there are lots of players, but then they come down because all your outs are taken.
Yeah.
And this is one of the problems when people are talking about hitting, top pair in fixed limit poker. So many of their outs are taken, and they're up against 7 players who are all drawing in lots of different hands, which is why I said yesterday a statement which could be decontextualised and misconstrued, that limit poker played multi-way with 6 or 7 players seeing the flop is almost like Omaha high-low. It's a nuts or drawing to the nuts game, and top pair is basically an underdog in that situation. I don't know if you agree with that, James.
What, that...
If you're playing fixed limit poker,
yes,
right? A lot of people are saying, they play king 10, right? And a 10 comes down, and it's the top pair on the flop. When you've got 6 opponents in that situation, and you've got if the flop is is textured enough to have some straight draws, some inside straight draws, some flush draws, some backdoor flush draws, with 6 or 7 opponents, your top pair is unlikely to be the favourite. And it's certainly unlikely to be the favourite in a context where your bets will definitely be called. In other words, if everyone's going to the river because the pots become so big by that time, you've got to have the nuts or a draw to the nuts.
Well, yeah, in limit poker, it'd be absolutely a no-no to bet this hand, because the chances of it thinning the field is virtually nil, and the chances of it enticing another raise, of course, is much higher than the chance of thinning the field. And you don't want to raise the stakes with this hand.
No.
You're hoping to connect another 10, probably, and then you'll feel more confident in the hand, or possibly the king. But when you've hit your king in the 10, of course, then the straight rears its ugly head. So it's probably not a hand you should be playing too much in limit hold'em, to tell the truth.
No.
But in that case, yes, that would be a no-bet situation in limit hold'em. One thing there, in the implied odds, of course, in limit hold'em, the problem there, of course, is when you've walked into this re-raise, which you do walk into probably more often in limit because it doesn't cost so much for someone to do it, but of course it decimates your implied odds.
Because it then does thin the field.
Yeah, and also it's actually charging you the same amount again.
Oh, right, yes.
But it's not increasing the pot by the same multiple, because it's now the odds are getting decimated because the pot's not getting much bigger, but it's charging you double the price. Whoa, what's happened here? All of a sudden I thought I was getting 10 to 1 or 11 to 1, suddenly I've been knocked down to 6 to 1 or something. What's going on here? And it could get worse. Because some of my outs might have to be counterfeited by other people. Maybe
we'll come to that issue later on the show, because it's one of my bugbears. I've never really talked that much about on this show. Is the concept of raises in limit poker being having two very specific effects. Number 1 being to build the pot, and number 2 being to thin the field. Because the question is, let's say you're going to do a check raise. the question that you have to ask yourself is, where is the bet going to come from? Because if the bet is going to come from, let's say you're in first position, if the bet's going to come from the button and you're going to check raise that, you're going to thin the field by knocking out everyone in between, because they're all schooled not to call too cold bets. And if the bet comes from the next person, you're going to build a pot, because the next person bets, everyone bets, you check raise, everyone bets again. So that issue in limit poker is a real big one for me. But for now, let's confine ourselves to this question of outs. And the situation there is top pair in that situation has so many different outs against it, not for it, that it's in a classic reverse implied odds situation. Anyway, we're going to come back to implied odds that night, but for now, Ravinder has a very interesting question. He says, when multi-tabling on the same site, how do I see both tables at the same time and not have to flick from one to the other, especially when it's my turn on both? I know that you have a technological setup which gets around this situation very simply. James, what is it?
Yes, just change the settings on your screen, go to Properties, and just change the settings, and you should be able to, if you've got a 17-inch, say, screen or widescreen or whatever, you should be able to then get 4 tables on the screen not overlapping at all.
Fantastic. I was also thinking that you have 2 monitors.
Oh, yes, well, that's another way of doing it. I have got 2 monitors as well, yeah, but I mean, that's on the one
Yes.
screen, you can just do it that way, which is very handy.
Great stuff, folks. Do get all your texts and emails coming into the show. We are here to answer them. Texts 84222. Not 62211, 84222. Text poker and then your question. You must text poker, otherwise it'll go to someone else. And emails poker@pokernightlive.co.uk. Poker@pokernightlive.co.uk. Also check out the forums, of course, on www.pokernightlive.co.uk. And we have been picking up on Ken's question of implied odds tonight. We're going to come to some more emails later on and back to the continuation of Ken's on that subject, but it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's James's sit and go. Let's have a look at that playing out. So James, how did you feel mentally before it started? Were you in a fighting mood?
Yeah, I felt okay.
Yeah. How much are you into that concept, James? How much do you think how you feel beforehand affects how you're going to play?
Well, I think what's more important is how fresh you feel when you play poker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have you got plenty of energy? Have you got enough energy to focus on what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I think certain times you go to play poker and you find, you know, you've sat down at the table and it takes you a long time to settle because, you know, and you say, well, what's happened in the first 15 hands? Well, couldn't really tell you because you've not really settled.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes longer to settle. I do feel at other times that I've been more in the zone than others, which is probably a bad thing to say because you should try and be in the zone all the time. But I'm sometimes aware of a tournament where I felt, yes, I was really in tune. I never looked at my cards until it got round to me. I watched everyone else before I looked at my cards. I watched what they did. I was taking note of their raises. I was seeing what was happening. And there's times there when I've been really, really in the zone. Now, sometimes maybe when you've been playing too many tournaments, you get a little bit sloppy. And perhaps you just don't concentrate enough. But I think maybe the moral to that is that perhaps we shouldn't overplay and maybe if we cut out a couple of the tournaments and just raised the standard of the ones that we were playing in,
yes,
that might be the better idea.
Well, do you know, that's very interesting you say it, James, because I've actually been changing my thoughts and feelings about internet play recently, about playing poker generally. Okay, there's a phrase, apologies to people who are listening and watching on Friday, but there's a phrase in business which is 120% of your profits come from 80% of your clients, right? In other words, some clients just make a loss.
Right.
Yeah? And if if and when you strip away those loss-making clients, you'll make much more profits, right? I have long been an advocate of, you know, you're a professional poker player, you know, pull your socks up. You need to play through the bad times. It's not like God will, you know, carry on giving someone these bad cards while you sit out this bad run. Yeah, you need to develop ways to emotionally and mentally pick yourself up. Now, I still stand by that, but in a real world scenario where you know, you're not going to be perfect every time. What about if you just played poker online? You know, you can choose whenever you want to play. What about if you just played poker for the 10 days a month that you feel absolutely great, and didn't play in the 20 days a month where you don't feel great? What about maximising your profits that way? Just playing when you're in the zone. Roy West says, you know, many a time he lives in California, he would drive 60 kilometres up to his card rooms in San Francisco, get there, not feel right and drive home again. Play happy or don't play is his phrase. What is there behind that?
Yeah, I think it is an individual choice, basically, and I think every individual has a different mindset. Mm-hmm. So, regarding the internet, I like to sort of predetermine. I think it's a good idea, and works for me. I like to sort of predetermine how long I'm going to play, mm-hmm. for example, mm-hmm. and I'll probably either predetermine amount of time I'm going to play, mm-hmm. or possibly I'll predetermine how many hands I'm going to play.
Mm-hmm. And why will you do that?
Well, the hands would be if I was playing on a site where I was getting rake back, mm-hmm. then I'd say, well, basically I'm actually earning money by playing, mm-hmm. and I'd like to play so many hands in the month.
Right.
So maybe I set myself a target of how many hands I wish to play.
Okay.
And but the good thing about it is I'm not falling in love with the result on the session.
Okay, yeah.
So when I come to the end of that session, I'll then play round until it's my time to post the blind again,
yeah.
and that'll determine the end of my session,
yeah.
regardless of the result.
Yeah.
So that's good because I'm not compartmentalising my poker. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be too concerned about when you say to me, oh, James, how did you do yesterday? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you how I did. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to fall in love with it.
Of course.
I'll say, yeah, actually, I had a good day. I got really unlucky, but I only lost so much, or whatever. That's the way we should look at our game.
Sure.
We should. Oh, I lost $324. It's awful. It shouldn't be that. It's
sure.
just, did I play correctly? And you know. So
but I'm not.
Okay. Go on. So therefore, my mindset there would be, mm-hmm. as long as I feel. Okay, if I've got a raging headache and I've planned to play, well, I'm not going to play because I say, well, I'm going to be probably too sloppy and I'm not going to want to play. Now, in that case, I wouldn't be happy, and so I wouldn't play. Mm. But generally, I feel sort of reasonably happy about playing anyway.
Yeah.
I think to argue with, Browning's got a pair of kings. I thought, this is good.
I love it when you refer to yourself in the third person. It really does it for me.
This is good. How can I get any money? Oh, there's a little limper. I thought that's quite nice.
Excellent.
Perhaps I'll just put in a little baby raise because I don't want to frighten everyone away.
No, and we've said actually that the early stage of these sit and goes is
I could have limped. Maybe I should have just called.
Yes, that is one of the times when you would just call with these hands.
But I put a baby raise.
Still 3 times the big blind, James.
It is, but it only costs 40. He's going to get 5 to 2 his money.
It's coming from Mr. Browning.
He's going to get 5 to 2 his money.
You're accrediting him with rationale. Now, I'm not saying that he has not got rationale, but are you equating your level your thinking onto his level?
And he passes. Ah, okay.
You knew he was getting pot odds. Did he think about it that way, or did he think James only bets with a monster?
Yes, well, in the end, I thought, well, okay, I don't mind because Ray's pass, that's fine. This is a good precedent for the future.
Well, exactly. Well, yeah. And my point would be...
But retrospectively
it's still
now, I mean, the thing is he could have well been sitting there with an ace if I had now end up with a big problem there.
That's my point.
So
you did the right thing. It doesn't matter what he did, does it?
And listen, if he'd had a pair of queens, I might well have got all his money.
That's yeah, exactly.
And that's the bit we didn't see, because he only had queen 10.
That's right.
But if he'd limped with a pair of queens, which is possible, maybe then I could have got all his money.
Well,
I'd have certainly won quite a bit, probably.
If he'd limped with ace jack, you're still, 70% favourite, so you're still doing the right thing. Kings are hot. Johann's got them.
Johann's got the kings.
There's Queen King. Now, we're not going to read it now, but there's an email from Jay who talks about the King-Queen rules in the land of the unraised pot, so which is your phrase, James. And he says that he's heard both myself and Dr. Tom prefer alternative ways of playing with King-Queen. which is absolutely true. We have proffered alternative ways of playing with King-Queen, and he asks, how can people have different ideas of playing with King-Queen? So we're going to come back to that debate. We're not going to have it right now, because we're going to focus on the game, but it's very interesting, the different ways of playing with King-Queen, which turns out to be a key hand in this tournament for various reasons. So let's have a look at it now and a little bit of a think about it. And then once we've thought about it, let's have a drink. I think a lot of the viewing audience of this show think I'm an alcoholic, James, I've got to be honest with you.
No.
Which is not true.
No, it's definitely not true.
I've drunk more this year. I've drunk more, well, I've drunk probably more in the last 3 months than I would normally drink in an average year. But that's only because in an average year I would regularly go 4 or 5 weeks without having a drink.
Browning's got a pair of kings.
You're getting the deck smashing.
I've done a smaller raise this time.
You?
I've made it 40.
I think you may as well. I think you may as well have held a sign around your neck saying I've got a pair of aces or kings at that point, though, James.
I could have had a different hand.
I think when a solid player like you makes a 2 times the big blind raise.
No, hang on, I did it different. I've done 3 times the first time.
Yes, I know.
2 times the second time.
I know.
So
and what I'm saying is,
why should it be the same hand?
No, they don't know that it's the same hand. What I'm saying is, when a solid player like you makes a 2 times the big blind raise, I think it screams, "I've got a good one."
Okay.
What do you think?
It could do. Early stages, it probably does. But I think probably in the Beat the Presenter game here, it does take on a different shape.
You get a lot more respect.
And also, people just don't want to be the first one out.
No.
Because you'll see, it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
People just don't want to be the first one out.
Yeah, but and therefore for me, that's a very good reason for playing more loosely and playing aggressively on the flop.
Yeah.
Going to be the presenters.
But
And sometimes you find yourself out of sync with the game, as I did in a $50 tourney about, God, feels like 6 months ago now, and
flush here, sorry, flush
Yep.
for Paul UK.
And does Fisherman pay him off with his second pair? I'm sure he doesn't. Sure he doesn't. Not even a question mark, is there really?
I think he's got plenty of reason to pass, and he does. Well done, Fisherman.
And you feel out of sync with the game, and all your little raises get called and are beaten by bigger hands, and you end up looking like an Egypt. But I think a lot of the time in these Beat the Presenter games, that's how you should be playing. And what's interesting is, of course, by saying that, the next time that I play Beat the Presenter, those words will ring in some people's ears because, of course, their subconsciouses will remember, and they'll make some calls that they wouldn't normally make against me. But I still think that it's the way for us to play them. And what's interesting is, it's probably the opposite of what we thought 4 months ago when this was first proposed, isn't it? Because certainly I thought when we play Beat the Presenter, we're just going to get called down all the time because people are going to want to take us out.
Yeah, I think they do, but it's...
I don't think they do. When? Do you feel you get called more often?
No, I think no, because I think they want to take you down, but they want to make sure they've got the goods. They want to...
Yeah, but they don't have control over that. So what I'm saying is...
But they do like to pinch, they like to steal your bets.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm not saying they don't... I'm not saying I haven't been re-raised by some cheeky monkeys, but that's great. I've been very impressed by some of the re-raises. But I don't think they call in the way that I thought they would. I thought they'd sort of go, I want to take Caspar out now, and call. And actually, it's good. I think it's great that they've gone... Actually, no, I want to be seen to be playing good poker, not getting lucky against someone. Our audience is far too good, far too knowledgeable, far too au fait with how the game's played and what gains you respect as a poker player, and particularly in a cards-up situation.
Anyway, these other hands here, there was no hand here where I would have so far played. I'm not calling a raise with that, especially on that size. Small blind, 7-8, even though some people like 7-8, I wouldn't have liked it in that situation.
Fair enough.
I feel in these sit and goes, I was actually hoping to see one person go, because I sometimes feel it's a bit like a balloon. And once one person gets knocked out, it tends to affect the whole game. But until the person goes, it just seems to...
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely.
be jammed up there slightly.
And then once the first person goes, it's like they drop like flies,
Yeah.
don't they?
It's sort of the relief is gone. Oh, I wasn't first out or whatever. People get braver or foolhardier or whatever, and it all changes. So I wasn't wishing Posh on, but he was the lowest stack, so I thought, well, looks like a little bit of weakness there. I'm still quite happy with my situation. I've got virtually what I started with. We've got DVN, who's got chip leader at the moment with 3,290. And we've had an amusing bet, 81.99 cents.
Is that on special?
Yeah, I think there's an even special, even more special bet later.
Special needs.
Paul UK, Queen 4. Wow, what's going on here? And he tried, but he then got away from it. It's a nice flop for Kev. Didn't give him any questions to worry about. Johan there, late position Queen 10, he's raised. 120, captured the chips there. Good bet from Johan. I'm early position with Queen 8, not tempted again. And it's a big re-raise from Tem H. Fish and Chips made the raise from the button, 120, and Tem H came over the top with the pair of tens. And got a pass.
Oh.
But again, no surprise in this early stages here, because again, it's this, don't want to be out first. 4 Jack 7. No one's connected.
Why did you get to be called Browning 007? I'm Caspar B. It's not even spelt right. It's Caspar B.
All right.
So my name's spelt wrong,
Yeah.
and it's basically my name and an initial, and you're James Bond.
And so with a gun thrown in it, a Browning.
I think that's mainly in your brain.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
Browning. Oh, 7.
James Browning.
Well, a bit disappointed. I've had sort of 2 sparkling hands.
Yeah,
And
and not
nothing
much
else.
of them, has it?
Johan there raises to 120, 3 times the big blind, and DVN has got position there on the button with Ace Jack suited. Is he going to believe this raise from Johan? Because he has got more chips than Johan.
Well, Johan's in 3rd position. Is he going to utilise
He's just checked
reverse
there,
position? No.
and DVN's checked. They've both gotten up and down straight. Ah, DVN bets 160.
What is Johan doing calling that?
He's got an up and down
Oh,
straight.
they got up and down straight. I'm sorry.
And actually, slight error there from DVN, because if he looked at that flop, he's actually virtually pricing Johan in there. Maybe he could have actually priced him out of a few situations.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's not just looking at the cards. That just is not for too much more. He could have actually dampened his enthusiasm and just taken that pot down, because he did have position with him, but I think that 160 was just a little bit too small. And I think that's something we should look at. Don't just click that small bet there. Just have a look at the size of the pot and say, what odds am I giving my opponent with this bet? And especially a player like Johan, because we know he's a very good player, and we know he looks at the odds. So let's bear that in mind. We've got to look at the other side of the scenario. So on our show tonight, we're talking a lot about odds, we're talking a lot about implied odds. So now, let's think about the odds we're giving our opponent. And this will help us to shape our bets.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm doing a lot of thinking about this in response to an email we've got from Making Jam about this, which we're going to go into as soon as we finish your tournament, James. So Let's watch it until then.
$10-6, I'm in the cut-off. Blinds are still just not tempting enough for me. It's a hand I won't enjoy playing if they've called. And 120 just didn't tempt me enough. DVN, ace-queen, just calls. Johan, 9-7. There's 200 in the pot. He turns that down. And Fish and Chips checks, and DVN's hit the queen. Pretty confident that he's winning. Bets a minimum bet. He's got more chips, so there's like implied strength behind him. He's a big stack. He's the chip leader. Chip leader can often put in some small bets because he says he can flex his muscles. Say, look what could happen next. Right, interesting here. It's a raise to 240 from the pair of fours, called by ace-jack, re-raise all in by Posh.
Good, that's a good bet from Posh there for me.
And he's captured the dead money from Kev there and left Paul UK with a decision, and Paul UK puts it down. Good pass. And a good bet from Posh, and that's got him right back in the game again. He was our low stack before. Oh, Browning's got a pair of aces. In early-ish position, so I feel I'm obliged to raise. I've done a flat raise.
It's a 2 times the big blind again, James.
And they pass.
I just think, you know...
What would you have done?
I just think they've got you sussed.
They've got me sussed.
I think they say Browning, 2 times the big blind equals trouble. No, they don't know that, but... You wouldn't have got any action if you put 3 times the big blind in either.
No. So...
Okay, but direct question to you.
Yeah.
In that situation, is it better if you're getting so much respect to go, I've got to call with these aces? I don't like to do it, but you know how to play on the flop when you've called with aces. You know what you've got to have hit and what the texture of the flop needs to look like. Or do you feel so unhappy doing that that you do think the raise is the correct one?
I still think I wanted to put a raise there because I think they're giving me a lot of respect. I think my flat raise is going to thin the field anyway.
Yeah.
And I think it still gives me a chance to end up heads up against someone.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it means I probably haven't got much anyway.
Yeah, okay.
But they could end up... You know, I don't believe they're going to put down a pair of jacks. I don't believe they're going to put down a pair of queens.
No, not at all.
I don't believe they're going to put down a pair of tens. I think I'm going to end up... I don't believe a lot of people want to be in there either, so I could well end up in a lovely, juicy situation.
Yeah.
Just so happened, no one had anything.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate. When you've got your big hands, no one's there. But when you talk about luck in poker... The luck is to find a big hand when someone else has a hand which is big but not big as yours. That is the good luck in poker.
Yeah.
King 3, I'm thinking, goodness, they're passing everything. I might actually put in a bet, but no, Kev gets in there first. Paul UK, I don't think he'll be calling with Jack 8. And what does Posh do with his pair of twos? Going to cost him 160 to call. There's 360 in the middle, but he passes. I don't blame him. He's out of position. It doesn't play well out of position because every card is a scare card for him. King 4 in the cutoff. Pass. A flat raise by Paul UK with a pair of tens. A6, Johan. Paul bets 160, and I'm sure Johan will pass this. Oh, no, it's a re-raise. Wow, a move by Johan. And the re-raise, Paul UK does not believe it at all, and he comes over the top of Johan. Johan obviously has to pass this now. Deliberates as if, oh, I've got a big hand, I've connected really, but, oh, go on, I'll pass. Well, Paul believed in his hand there, and was not put off by Johan's raise. He probably knows in his subconscious that Johan is capable of raising without the business.
I've formulated an Uber theory, James.
Ooh, sounds good.
It's quite exciting, isn't it?
It is. One sec there. Top pair for Johan.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it out now. I'm going to wait till the end of this.
Oh, right.
I hope we spoil it to give it out over the top of a sit and go. But it's worth waiting for, folks, if you're thinking about going to bed because you've got work tomorrow.
Another funny bet, 2-4-1. And Kev Steele, oops, Johan there. And notice Johan there, checking. And he's demonstrated a Browning.
Sounds rude.
Wasn't quite sure where he was, but decided to check and call.
Absolutely.
And he captured a bluff.
Absolutely. And do you think by doing that he induced a bluff, James?
He did.
Yeah.
Because it looked like weakness, it looked like he might pass.
Yeah.
He protected himself against losing too much against an ace with a bigger kicker or a bigger hand.
Yeah.
And got rewarded anyway.
Excellent.
So a good play by Johan. I wonder if that coincided with me saying that. I might have just done it for a laugh. And Kev Steele there, A6 under the gun makes it $240.01. Or 240 points and 0.01 of a point. Gets the money. Well, I'm still there. I've got 1930, Cass. And we've still got 8 players. But I'm okay.
Yeah, blinds are 8160, so you've got more than 10 times the big blind. At what point do you start pushing all in, James? What level of big blind? Would you cease to make a 3 times the big blind raise?
I'm not. It's getting closer, but I'm still not fully under pressure here yet.
Sure.
In fact, I'm still quite capable of getting rid of this hand and
of course,
going another round.
But what I'm saying is, when you've got a legitimate raising situation,
I'm getting close to be. If my chips, if I lose both these blinds, then I'm going to probably be looking to.
When you get down to about 1500,
yeah,
so less than 10 times.
Because, yeah, and I'll look at my total price for each round, which is 240. So I'll do 2 things. I'll be looking at my total big blinds. I'll look for my total price per round. And then I'll be looking also at my chips in relation to the other players. So again, I found garbage. I'm not going to be able to play with this. And I don't even want to limp in here with that because I just can't afford to do it. That 80 is probably better just kept on my stack there. I can't withstand any raise at all. Although he's raised with 10-4, but I can't withstand it. And so I just passed that, and I don't regret that. Hoping for something in position.
Not getting it.
And that's stopped any temptation there anyway, because Fish and Chips has raised 3 times the big blind to 480. And starting to get a little bit worrying, this. Fish and Chips raises it up. 480's found another hand there. I think DVN's just teasing.
Teething or teasing?
He could be teething or sleeping, I think, actually.
Yeah. It's ironic. Everyone else very clear about what they want.
Yeah, we're not waiting any longer. We're sick of that one. Oh, King. Oh. Ooh.
So, Fish and for Chips found a couple of hands at the right time.
King 5 for Browning.
What do you think about here, James? Was I pestering you?
I've actually.
And that's interesting. You've actually just raised the 2 times the big blind, haven't you?
Well, because I felt that they'd been giving it a lot of respect before.
That's right. That's right.
I'd waited for quite a long time.
Yep.
I've missed the flop. I hate the flop. I'm not going to just be stubborn.
Yep.
And I'm glad I got away from it.
The thing you hate more is the call by the person just to your left, isn't it?
But then I hate the flop.
Yes.
But I decided to try that. I thought it was worth a go. I saw how much it would cost me. I'd already worked out how much money it left me.
Right.
And I knew where I was going to be with that amount of money.
Yeah.
I thought, well, they gave it a lot of respect before. Let's see if I can still get away with that.
No, I agree. In fact,
And as it happens, I'd got the guy to call me. I was favourite.
Yeah.
I had a king against his Jack 10.
Yeah.
But, of course, he connected well with the flop. Oh, all in.
Excellent. So that's the point. So getting down to
that was it, and that had got me to the point, and I'd already worked out what that move would do to me.
Yeah.
And so now I thought, well, that's an opportunity. One.
Yeah.
And so I've now taken down the chips with ace-9.
Okay, mate. Yeah, understand.
So, comments?
No, absolutely perfect for me.
Okay.
Especially the 2 times the big blind, because it's exactly what we've been saying about it, which is that it's created folds. I mean, for me, it's less the flop that I hate than his call immediately to the left, and is the fact that he's immediately to the left, because if he was on a button or even in one of the blinds, I'd feel happier about it.
And the other thing is, if I do 3 times the big blind, it detracts from my fold equity next time.
I agree.
I'm looking ahead.
Yeah.
So I'm not just looking at that play on that hand, I'm looking ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, I've got 1370 or whatever. That is still enough to get people to pass.
Yes.
But if I take another 160 off my fold equity starts to drop quite dramatically.
I agree.
Because now the guys with bigger stacks could get brave. And Kev Steele's found another hand. He's found ace-king on the button. Nice one. Don't know what I was thinking about there. Paul UK called with queen 2. Wow.
Any justification for that call there from Paul UK, James? It's you know what I think when I look at this is
I don't like this. I suppose he's trying to represent he's got an 8 or something.
Yeah, well, Kev checked the flop, didn't he? What I'm concerned about when I look at this is that we read articles by Daniel Negreanu saying, and I decided to call him from the big blind with Queen 4 suited.
Yeah.
But it comes back to this whole deep stack implied odds principle of that's because Daniel Negreanu has 100 times the big blind in his stack when he does that.
That's a perfect point. And in a sit and go, you ain't got that much play, so you can't afford it. It's a luxury.
It's your license thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't have a license.
You don't have a license to play a hand like that.
No.
Later on the tournament, you got a license to do a lot with that hand, but
well, you got a license to raise with that.
Raise
hand
with it, yes.
Well,
you got a license to raise with any hand.
You have got a license to call with it because you've got 100 blinds in your stack. But at this point, you don't, and that's the key.
Flat raise from the kings, and over the top from ace queen. Posh there, I'm sure, is going to disappear from this encounter. A raise and an all-in raise. He's just wondering if he can get 2 opponents, I think, possibly.
And by the way, I don't hate that all-in from ace-queen. I mean, it looks awful now because he's doing it against kings, but what do you think, James? I don't hate it at all.
No, I'm sure that he thought that he had some fold equity.
Yeah.
It was a flat raise. The guy mightn't have had so much, and I think he thought he had some fold equity. And I'm sure that he did have some fold equity in the long run. If we look at that situation where someone raised from that situation, I'm sure he'd have some fold equity. Oops, all in from Browning with 10 jack.
You say oops, but I mean, I'm sure you get away with it. No, I mean,
But just saying, cut-off position there, so it's a game position, a gain reputation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite a bit of fold equity for me.
Absolutely.
I'm fortunate they didn't have it.
I think when TMH raises 2 times with those kings, I've said it before, it means 2 things. I banged on about this last night. It means 2 things when people raise 2 times the big blind in the majority of situations. By majority, I mean just over 50%. It means aces or kings or one of these hands like 10 jack or queen jack where people think I might be able to steal the blinds, and if not, I've got nice 2 high suited connectors. So I think when he comes over the top of that with ace queen, I think you're right. I think he's got a lot of fold equity. There's enough there to push the guy off queen jack.
Here we have aces against trip 6s. Wow.
I like Posh.
Paul UK back in the game.
You were going to say something.
Yes, I had the... Oh, we've got another hand. We can't... It's all happening now.
It's all happening.
DVN, he's found aces in the big blind. What a lovely place to find them. Oh, he's unlucky. No one attempted to steal. Bad luck. Well, I'm getting slightly worried again because the blinds are now 163.20.
Yeah.
Now this is tough because 480 around.
Yeah.
And the blinds are coming. I'm getting really worried now.
You've got less than...
Although there's still 8 players, I'm too worried about the amount of play I've got here.
God, yeah, there's 8 players still left. God.
I know, it's incredible. Up to 163.20, you've got 8 players. Unbelievable. So basically, virtually everybody's under pressure.
Yeah.
Even the chip leader, he's got 3.5. But I mean, he's only got 7 rounds. Right, I've got King Queen. I'm in the small blind. I've only got 1370 left. There's 480 in the middle. And he raises, and I think, I don't like calling with King Queen, as you know, but in this situation...
You don't like calling a raise with King Queen?
No, but in this situation,
call.
I feel I've got to.
Okay.
I just think time's running out. I haven't got so many chips, because the big blind's 320. I don't think I've got as much fold equity as normal. I think I might be in good shape in this hand. He's in late positions when he's raised. I can see there's extra money in the big blind, which might come into the pot for free. As it happens, it's ironic, my call is actually chases out the ace-queen, who doesn't want to get involved.
No, that's right.
And I've ended up with 2 overcards against a pair of 10s. Paul is cursing because his ace would have hit. And bye-bye Browning, I'm first out. But I don't regret that call, because if we just have a look at that, there was 480 in the middle. He's betting basically 1370. So that's 1850 in the middle.
Yes.
And it's costing me 1370.
Yeah.
So I'm getting quite good odds here. I'm getting 9.25 to 6.8.
Yes.
So I'm getting great odds.
Let me just make a challenge there, James, because there's no right or wrong answers, as we're going to go on detail in quite some length. But the challenge is this.
Do you want to just complete this hand while it's still frozen?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. How do you mean complete?
Oh, no, what's your comment?
You know, the challenge is this, is that in these sit and goes, how much do you want to be the aggressor? Because I always want to be the aggressor. In other words, I almost never want to call, because the gap becomes so big in these things that you get so much fold equity.
Yep.
I'm wondering when it is correct to
call. I all the time I want to be the aggressor.
You agree with that as a principle?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I want to bet. For me to call, it hurts. For me to call with King Queen, ouch! It really hurts, because there's not too many hands I'm going to be in great shape against. But my situation was this. I'm getting 9.25 to 6.8, pretty good odds. Next problem. If I pass, I've got 1370 left. If I now push in, someone's going to be on the big blind with 320 in the middle already.
Yep, sure.
He's only going to have to put 1,050 in to call.
Yes, yes.
If there's extra money in there, and he's got chips, he can find a reason to call. Now I'm going to be a bit restricted where I push against.
I completely agree. The one thing
so I think my fold equity has...
Is gone down.
It's gone down a lot.
It's definitely gone down. It's definitely gone down a lot. But the one thing that counteracts that is this situation that you've got 8 players still left in this sit and go, and the gap is still very big at that stage in this sit and go. In other words, people are calling rarely. So that's what keeps the fold equity quite high, I think.
Right.
Which is what would maintain the reason to call. I'm not saying, listen, I'm a sitting on the fence kind of thing. I'm just putting the opposing thing.
Yeah,
to,
no, it's
to
good.
Get
I mean, listen, a short time to think there, but this is what was running through my head all the time. This is what I'm looking at. As I said, it goes against the grain for me to be a caller. I would say many a time I can put a big hand down, because I'd prefer to bet blind with it the next time. Yeah. That's how it. I
know you do. You've demonstrated that many times on playing the sit and goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't care. You know, I'd be much prefer that. I love fold equity. Yeah. I love it because I don't have to jump the fence. I don't have to jump the Grand National fence. Lovely, no showdown, just give me the money. No fence. Every showdown is a fence you've got to jump. I had the jump here, it wasn't a very big jump, I couldn't make it. Yeah. Dead. Yeah. Right, so I hate them. But this here swung it, because now I look at this, and now I look at the plus point. And the plus point is, if I win this, I actually go chip leader. Yeah, yeah, which gives a massive... So I go chip leader. So now the plus point is big. The plus point is very big here. Yes. And there's a good chance I'm in late position. He doesn't have to have such a great hand. Oh, he could have. And could he not be doing it with Jack 10? Of course he could. Could he not be doing it with King Jack? The only reason I'm pushing on this is because without analysing it and without saying you did the wrong thing, I know that I would have folded there, but I don't know exactly why. Do you know what I mean? Or I think my thing is I would have folded because I want the fold equity. But I don't maintain that it's right. I'm just saying that's what I would have done in the same situation. Yeah. You could have played that and hit king, queen, queen on the flop. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not trying to play the position. I'll tell you what swung is enough to swing it for me. My greedy little eyes saw that 320 in the middle from my next door neighbour. My greedy little eyes saw my 160 lying in the middle there. 480. Hang on, I'm only going to have 1370 left. What percentage of my stack can I see lying just waiting to be picked up in the middle there? That is what swung me. And it's the upside was massive. Yeah. And if I pass, I'm in not great shape. Plus, everyone's under pressure, so his hand mightn't be so good. So the whole package, to me, made this an exception. I agree. And for me to call with King Queen is an exception. I know. And let's just say, folks, that when we're talking about this situation, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do because it didn't work on this occasion, and James isn't saying it's the right thing to do because it could have worked. What we're saying is, if we're in this situation 1,000 times, what is the play that is going to maximise our winnings in the long term? An analogous situation is, if we're saying that a play results in a failure, we may even be saying that a play results in a failure more often than it results in a success, because certain pot odds might dictate that that would still result in a profitable situation. And one analogy to that is, if any of you play blackjack, as a basic strategy in blackjack dictates that if you've got 16 and your dealer is showing a 7 or higher, then you should hit your 16. Now this feels really painful when you're doing it, and it's a real question mark as to who has the kahunas, because it feels like you're going to bust most of the time, and it feels like you are precipitating that bust. But it's a really strong lesson for life, I think this is, because very often the correct thing to do is the thing that may end up in failure. But just because it may end up in failure, you have to be a strong leader to take that decision that may precipitate failure, because it's going to look to the layperson or the idiot or the Sun newspaper that you have precipitated that failure, even though you did the thing that had the best long-term expectation. And James is saying in that situation, that had the best long-term expectation. Right, and how I'd just to dwell on this slightly longer, is how I'd look at this position is what happens, I've got 1370 left if I pass. What happens if I've got 1770 left? 1770 if I've got left. Yes. I almost certainly pass. Right, okay. That's what makes the difference. Because the odds I'm getting now are poorer. It's 22.5 to 17.7. Much closer odds. Plus, I now actually have more fold equity left with that stack if it has an extra 400 chips on it. Yes. And now I can say, 1770 with a round to go. Yes. And I think now, 1770, the person's got 320 in the middle. Yes. Hang on, he's still got to put 1450 in there. Yeah. This is enough to bully lots of people out of here. I can play situations with this. I pass it then. And that is the balance. Yes. Lower fold equity, juicy situation, bigger odds against smaller odds where I've got more fold equity if I pass. And this is the balance of the two. And I think it's an interesting situation because of that.
Well, that is a very interesting situation, and the way that you phrase it there is interesting, because what we're saying is that the difference between our decision, right, is 400 in chips.
I think so.
Right? And therefore the question is, to what extent is those 400 chips going to be significant when applied to our fold equity? Because that's what we're doing. And this is my big point, is subconsciously in the back of our minds we're doing that. You might do it with a piece of paper, but even if you don't do it with a piece of paper, you're still sitting there thinking, comes back to my point, is what's the opportunity cost? What's the opportunity cost of not folding this hand? What situation am I going to be in if I fold it, right? And so what I'm saying when I say that is, I think that I can still get people to fold because it's that early stage in the sit and go, there's 8 people left, and because my experience in the Beat the Presenters is that people are folding to my raises. You might have had different experience. It might be because people perceive us differently. It may just be because, you know, the 40 key hands that we've played in the Beat the Presenter things have worked out differently for us. But that's what's interesting, is we're using that experience that we've had and bringing all those things to make our decision.
Yeah, I said this is a slightly even stranger than normal, because this is the long structure and we're down to 163.20 with a full complement of players.
I know.
Wow, that's pretty unusual.
I know it is. Great, fantastic stuff as ever, folks. We're going to be back after this break with a brilliant chat about implied odds versus tight aggressive plays. So get back soon. Right, James.
Right,
I've got
Caspar.
2 emails here that are about ostensibly different things, but I've weaved them together.
Ooh.
So I want to get your thoughts on it, because they're actually just juxtaposing the 2 of them has made me come up with something which is interesting for me. It may be interesting for you, maybe not. I could be boring the socks off, 30,000 people in the next 10 minutes, but we'll just give it a go. 30,001. Macon Jam says, hello again all. I think that your own table image is a very important factor when figuring implied odds, and he's absolutely right, and we should wrap our own wrists now for not stating this up front. If you're seen as a tight player, it does affect your implied odds badly and means that you have to judge your bet sizes very carefully. If people know you're tight, they'll probably only call you if they have you beaten. If people see you as a bit manic, then your implied odds are much higher. I agree with this completely personally. I used to play tight aggressive, as extolled in all the best poker books, but recently have changed my style and I'm playing less and less than starting strength of my hand. I found this working well for me. Interestingly, my implied odds have gone way up. Also, when playing online, I found that an all-in bet is much more likely to be called than a pot-sized bet. No logic to this, but that's what happens in my experience. To come back to my original point, your table image is, in my opinion, the most important thing when dealing with implied odds. The actual bet size is less important than most would have you believe, but I could be wrong. Right, let's let that hang. Jay Freedom says, Dear Caspar and James, we all know that James's favourite saying is King-Queen rules in the land of the unraised pot. I'm sure you've got other sayings, James, so he's not so two-dimensional. James has repeatedly said to the P&L audience that he does not like to raise with a hand King-Queen, as he doesn't like to commit too much money to the pot pre-flop. If he misses the flop, he can get away from it cheaply. But if he hits, he knows where he is, in his words. However, I've heard both Caspar and Dr. Tom profess the benefits of raising with said King-Queen, as you get the benefits of a king on the flop, a queen on the flop, and also an ace on the flop for representation purposes. King on the queen, falling on the flop to improve your hand or to improve your hand in the eyes of the opponents. My question is this. How can 2 pros, whose opinions I respect so much, have such different ideas about said king-queen? Please can you offer a discussion about this difference of opinions on tonight's show, as it is often the different views that make P&L such a huge success in my eyes. Thank you, gentlemen, and a colossal show, as always. His words, not mine. Right, well, here's my feeling about it, and it's precisely the putting together of these 2 emails that makes it interesting, right? Because it's all about, as you once said, there is no right thing to do in poker. It's all about understanding the consequences of what you do down the line for later on in the hand. And as I said on Friday, there's a difference between strategy and tactics. Tactics is what you're going to do on that individual hand to maximise your winning. Strategy is how that individual goal fits into your overall table image and what your long-term strategy is, how you're going to win money in the long term. And here's what I think. I think that if you are a player who benefits from implied odds, then you're someone who's very passive pre-flop. But actually, from the flop onwards, you're actually tight aggressive. You give the illusion of action because you want to be called, but you're trying to get in cheaply pre-flop as much as possible, yeah? And then on the flop, basically only bet when you have it, because you're not going to get any fold equity. You're not going to get people folding to you. So actually the way to combat those people, inversely, is to raise it before the flop, to charge them as much as possible before the flop and not to allow them to get in cheaply before the flop. So what that made me think was that actually when you play king-queen for a call, you're trying to benefit from the implied odds, because when you hit it, you've got quite a hidden hand because you haven't raised it up. And in that situation, as you said, James, you're likely to be best when those kings and queens fall because it hasn't been raised. And therefore you're the guy that's benefiting from that tiger in the long grass situation.
So you're saying that when you call... You're saying,
when you just call.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Now, when you raise with king-queen pre-flop, that's what forms part of a tight aggressive strategy. In other words, you're not going to get really any implied odds when it falls. In fact, the exact opposite. You want to represent so that you get fold equity even when an ace falls. So what that led me to think is that we're actually looking at, when we talk about tight aggressive styles and loose aggressive styles, another way of talking about that is all the benefits of fold equity with the tight aggressive style. So that's how that figures out in your tree of what's likely to happen, with, on the other hand, all the benefits of implied odds. So you're either looking at fold equity or implied odds. Very difficult to get both as part of your overall strategy. But actually, when you look at poker substructurally, that's what you benefit from the two styles. Fold equity or implied odds. What do you think?
Right. With the king-queen, I think, I agree, obviously, as you're no surprise, that I think when you just call with king-queen, it's definitely it's a hidden hand. It's because people just don't expect you to have king-queen, because they themselves might raise with this hand. They think it looks very pretty, two big picture cards. So therefore, also, you actually feel that someone with ace-queen or ace-king will have raised pre-flop. So there's a good chance, okay, they might have limped with it, but there's a good chance that more times than not they will raise with it. So there's a good chance the horrible ace-king and ace-queen, the horrible aces, the horrible kings and queens aren't there. So now, this is the land where king-queen rules, when those horrible hands aren't around. So now when you ping your queen or you ping your king in its top pair, you feel very, very happy.
And people will call you.
And yes.
They'll pay you off.
Yes, and they'll pay you with their queen jacks, their king jacks, their king tens, because these are the ones they thought, oh, I'll limp in with this.
And that's implied odds. That's all it is.
Okay. The problem is when you raise with king-queen is I can't agree that you benefit from hitting a king, a queen, and an ace. I just can't agree with this.
Why not?
Because you might be able to represent the ace, but you don't need king-queen to represent the
no,
ace.
that's absolutely true.
It could be any two cards.
No.
Let me finish this. But it's detrimental a lot of the time when you hit your king or your queen, because the downside of this hand is that you don't know where on earth you are. So now you're in the land of winning a small pot because you don't know where on earth you are, or losing a monster pot because somehow you get inveigled into this by someone who's actually got you out-kicked.
Not at all. I'll lay it down. Because if he's got me out-kicked, he's going to raise.
No.
What you're doing is you're criticising...
I'm criticising the raise with it.
I know, but what you're doing when you do that, James, is you're lambasting the whole essence of a tight aggressive style. Because the essence of a tight aggressive style is that it gives you the licence to raise with hands that aren't premium hands and represent premium hands, and let me finish, and therefore allow your continuation bets to work. That's what a tight aggressive style does. It gives you fold equity on the flop. I'm not saying that you get... You're absolutely right.
Follow-up.
Yeah, you said it doesn't have to be king-queen that you represent the ace. You can do it with any hand.
That's my follow-up.
I agree completely.
Let me follow up.
I agree completely.
In a cash game, a no-limit cash game, are more likely to raise with 6-7 suited...
Yes.
Than king-queen, for sure.
Absolutely. No, that's fine.
Now, I have got loads of implied odds because they say, well, James, he won't have that. He must have ace-king. He might have this or that. Yeah, unlucky. I've got 6-7. I've just flopped a straight and I've got all your money. Right. That is the one. Now, I can do my continuation bet. I can represent I've hit the ace. I've got 6-7. Why do I need to have anything?
Well, what's interesting about having 6-7, James, is that you actually get what you've cited there is an example of having the benefit of both.
Yes.
Right. But what you've done when you raise with 6-7 is you've diminished your implied odds massively because you've eliminated players from the pot. If you want to maximise your implied odds with 6-7, then you call and you have a lot of players.
Oh,
but you're
this
also
plays differently now.
Yes, no, I know, but then you're also maximising your implied odds in a different way because you've played it deceptively, and therefore you've thrown people off the fact that you could have.
It's
6-7.
deception. And if I'm playing no limit, I stated no limit. If I'm playing no limit hold'em, I don't need to have everybody there.
No, that's fine. No.
Because my 6-7 might make 2 pair and I capture all the money from the guy who's hit his ace.
Which brings us right back to the beginning of this conversation, which is that when you increase your implied odds by having lots of players, you also open yourself up to the problem
Flopped
of
ace,
outs.
6-7, I've done my continuation bet. He thinks, he can't be doing that because I actually just called his raise with ace-king. Got you. Sorry, got you, pal. I've got 2 pairs.
I really want to stress this. There's nothing that you're saying that I disagree with.
Okay, good. But the bit is I know I've been following it a lot, and because the more it's come up in conversation, I've analysed and watched with interest king queens in money games, and I just know what altering my play has done with that king queen.
And incidentally, I broadly speaking agree with you.
Okay.
I do broadly speaking agree with you. What I'm saying is that I like to raise with king queen from time to time because it gives me those benefits. If you're a tight aggressive player, and particularly in a limit game, those can be the benefits of raising with king queen. But then it comes down to the difference between strategy and tactics. Strategically, a tight aggressive player wants to be raising before the flop with his premium hands that he's going to turn over, and with his non-premium hands that he's not going to turn over. And occasionally, not every time he gets 6-7 suited in late position, and that's a really important thing to stress. Yeah, but do you know what I mean? It's important to stress because otherwise you get players who literally raise every time they've got 6-7 in late position, and actually what happens then is you lose your tight aggressive image.
Yeah, because eventually you get seen a few times.
That's right.
And people subconscious will remember it.
So that's crucial. that is crucial. But what I'm saying is that with that king-queen, what you're then doing on the flop is you're then saying, I think to myself, I have to play this. And by the way, I'm not talking about when an ace flops, and I'm not talking about when a king-queen flops. I'm talking about the basic benefits that you get from raising with any hand. It could be king-queen or it could be 2-3, which is that you have taken the initiative and you are more likely to take it on the flop, whatever flops, because of your increased fold equity. And that's a fact as well. But all that happens is what you've got to say is, you said yourself, sometimes calling with aces before the flop is the correct thing to do, but you've got to know how to play them on the flop in relation to what you did before the flop and how aware people are of it. So if you said to me, what is the profit maximising way to play king-queen on average in a no-limit game, I would say call. Okay?
Right.
That's definitely true.
I want to just add very quickly, I'm agreeing with you, but I think I'm stating this king-queen play as no limit. If I'm in a limit game, I've got king-queen suited, I can be doing different plays. I'm not stating it for that. I'm talking about the land where it can get very dangerous, the land where it can be very expensive, and that's why it's a no-limit rule, basically.
And that's why I know that we're agreeing with everything, because there's nothing that you're saying that I'm disagreeing with.
Good.
And in fact, what I love about what we're saying is that it comes back to this beginning that we were talking about, which is that 6-7 suited can have high implied odds by isolating.
Yes, it doesn't have to be against a host of players.
No. But it can also have implied odds by just calling and bring the flop if those other players are passive and will check us down to allow us to draw to our hand and then pay us off on the river.
Yeah, because the powers of what Caspar said, I agree obviously with, is that the 6-7 isolated, the person says, well, you wouldn't want to isolate with 6-7, so it makes it very deceptive.
But you would for the deception, that's right.
Now, making jam, was it the first part, with table image?
Yeah.
I just want to put a little bit of a point here.
Okay.
And I believe there's a big difference between playing on the internet and playing live. Now, one of the differences on the internet is that people come and go. They're not stuck at the table. They might play 10 hands, 1 hand, 20 hands. The table's forever changing. Have you not seen how quickly you've put your name in a waiting list? You say, oh, I'm number 6. Bing! All of a sudden you're at the table. There's been a lot of people coming and going. I am not certain that table image is even noticed as much on the internet. I think you could sit there and not play a hand for ages, put your money in and still get called. I think you do. Because I don't think it's the same. But if we're playing in a live game, and I'm sitting there in a live game, and I see Caspar hasn't played a hand for about an hour, I will notice this. And when he comes in and puts his money in, he's not going to get paid. Not a hope. But on the internet, it's a transient place. I think it goes unnoticed quite a lot. So although in principle, I agree with what you say about table image, I'm just questioning how much is table image noticed on the internet, and that's my point.
Do you know what I think we need to do, James? I think we need to bring up the image of a table. That's what we need to do. Let's quickly back through the text numbers. Text the show, poker, 84222. That's poker to 84222. And of course your question, otherwise the word in isolation won't tell us anything. And emails, poker@pokernightllive.co.uk, poker@pokernightllive.co.uk. Let's get to a table. We've got another email from Bog Treotta, which is very interesting, talking about table image and being tight aggressive and implied odds and all the rest of it. James, were you going to say something there?
No, that's fine.
Oh. Let's just have a look at what we're looking at. We're looking at the final table of the multi-table tournament, where we have Saucy Blonde, L Pig, and Big J. I've all made the final three, so congratulations to them. And we will be catching up with that, in addition to...
Cass.
Yes, mate.
I'm feeling sorry for the people in the sit and go I was in.
Do you know what, James? Here's what I would say, right? Now, I know that we didn't. I know that we didn't finish that sit and go, folks, and I do. You know, apologies to
I
all
want
the
to
people.
at least compensate.
I know you're going to compensate. But let me just say, they did have the benefit of a very detailed conversation about why you call with a king queen, which, in terms of what's going to benefit their poker winnings more in the long run, seeing themselves winning on the telly or listening to your thoughts about why to call with king queen in that situation, I would say the latter. But you go ahead and mention their names.
Anyway, I would just want to mention that DVN came second.
Yes.
And the winner, I think he was very low stacked at one time, he came back from the depths of despair and won it, was Paul UK.
Okay, and Paul, congratulations on winning the tournament, and also thank you very much indeed for laying down your moment of fame for the greater good of the viewing audience.
Give DVN a mention as well.
Well done to DVN too.
Okay, I feel better now.
Feel better now, do you?
Yeah.
Much better or a bit better?
Bit better.
Okay. Right, just while this conversation's still cracking our mouths, whilst we're watching the television out in the corner of our eyes, James, just to see if they have any key hands happening. They're all, Big J's massively stacked compared to the big blinds. Trotter says, Cass and James, very interested in the odds question, but I cannot help wondering if being tight aggressive in very loose games is positive value. I normally play low limit cash and find that despite 4 times big blind, standard raise, pre-flop, I get lots of calls from any suited connector and suited cards. Let's be honest, if you're multi-way with a premium hand pre-flop and you haven't improved, you're not really much of a favourite. Maybe in a very loose game it's better to limp and hope to hit the flop. What do you think? Well, basically, my feeling is very, very strong on this. You should be raising 4 times the big blind. If you're getting lots of calls, that's fine. You're getting lots of calls. There's nothing you can do about it. You're getting lots of calls. Period. You're getting lots of calls. Don't moan about it. So what do we do in that situation? We should be raising with our big premium hands, aces, kings, queens, possibly jacks. And we should be raising with big drawing hands. So ace, king suited, king, queen suited, ace, queen suited. Those are our big drawing hands, 10 jack suited, and you should be raising with them, you should be building a big pot, and like I say, I've said this many, many times, your variance is very high. Your variance is extraordinarily high, by the way, in those games, but you are making money when you hit your hands on the flop, or your draws. It's exactly what I said before. You're looking for draws or nuts, nuts or draws to the nuts. Now, less so than in limit games, because people can bet you off it on the flop, and that's fine, but that's what effective odds is. It reduces your effective odds if people are aggressive.
Got a slightly different slant here as well.
Go on.
And what you've got to do, he did say in the lower limit games.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think what you've got to do is you've got to look at the rate of exchange. And what I mean by that is...
Dollars and pounds?
No, that's what you might think, but it's not. What I'm saying is...
Because that's driving me mad at the moment.
What it is. I have to say... What is the rate of exchange for the raise?
How do you mean?
Well, it doesn't have to be 3 times, 4 times a big blind.
Okay.
Because in the lower limit games, the rate of exchange changes.
Yes.
And you now test the market.
Yeah, good.
And now you can put in maybe 10 times the big blind.
Yeah.
And isolate and get a caller with a substandard hand.
Yes.
It's not the same world. It's a different world.
Yeah.
Lower stake hold'em is a different world. Listen, you might just push it all in and you get a caller. It's a different world. But check out what the rate of exchange is at your table.
Very important point, James. Yeah, absolutely crucial point.
Do you like that one?
Yeah, I do, because
Are we going to keep rate of exchange? Does that fit?
Rate of exchange, I think, is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check out the rate of exchange
What are we
at your
exchanging?
table.
We're exchanging the raise for number of players.
Checking out the rate of exchange. What's the going rate for the raise on this table, boys?
Okay.
Listen, if we're at a table... Oh, I'll tell you, I must tell you this.
Yes.
We had a... No, I was going to tell you earlier, but we've been having such good conversations tonight. I've really enjoyed tonight's show. I hope the viewers have enjoyed it as much, because I think we have covered some really good topics. It's really got me thinking. So hopefully that'll have spread and everyone else is thinking as well. And listen, we'd still love to hear from you. It's late, but we don't care. We're enjoying it. We want you to enjoy it and want to hear from you. What I did try is, because I think I'd heard you saying about, because I think you get niggled by the flat raise.
No, I don't get niggled by it.
Okay.
No, not at all. No,
okay.
no, it's all tools, not rules for me.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I've experimented with, I've been playing some short-handed, no-limit hold'em.
Okay, interesting.
So I decided to go to the games there. I went to a game where I felt rich. So I went to a small estate game where I felt like a millionaire. And I decided to play predominantly only flat raises.
Good. And can I just interject and say, I've sat in this chair and argued for an hour in defence of Gary the Choirboy Jones, who only uses flat raises. So far from being niggled by them, I actually think they're brilliant. Again, as long as they're used as part of a strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went to these short-handed tables and I said, right, my raise is a flat raise. And that's all I did.
Yep.
So I was flat raising with aces, flat raising with 6-7, flat raising with anything. What did my flat raise mean? Oh, he's raised. Huh? Great. And every now and again, just to make them dizzy, I might throw in something else, just occasionally just to really unbalance
10%
people.
of the time.
So, yeah, probably. So that's what I did. And I basically just stuck to that. And I thought, how lovely this is. Because I now know they're waiting to trap me. Well, how easy it is for me to get away from the hand if I want to. How much do I leave behind? 2 big blinds. Thank you very much. How many hands am I winning in the meantime? Plenty. Thank you very much. And how deceptive it is when I've got the really big hand.
And that's the key for me, because Nick went on this diatribe about you know, you're giving them the correct odds to call from the big blind, and I said, look, the whole point of the fundamental theory in poker, which is flawed, the point of the fundamental theory of poker is you just want them to do the wrong thing.
Exactly.
That doesn't necessarily mean calling, hang on, which way around is this? That doesn't necessarily mean calling incorrectly. Sometimes it means folding incorrectly.
Of course.
So what you'll get them is folding incorrectly to hands which they should be calling.
How many times are they folding incorrectly?
Yeah.
Every time that they fold incorrectly, you are gaining equity.
That's right. That's right. So I love it from that point of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because I brought it up on another show, and I brought up the fact that there was a...
I hope not another show, you mean not a Poker Night Live. Are you moonlighting on other shows, James?
No, not another show, sorry, another Poker Night Live.
Okay.
Not moonlighting.
Who was that with? Because I feel like a cuckolded.
I think it could have been Dr. Tom. In fact, it was Dr. Tom.
Okay.
And I brought up the fact that there's a very fine player who's in the top 5 in the all-time money winners list, who doesn't play all the time.
Alan, what do you call him? What's his name?
Come on.
Alan, he's the world's best part-time player. He's a stockbroker on Wall Street.
Surname begins with a G.
Alan
Ding.
Goering.
Yeah, well done.
Yes,
Yes.
who loves it.
Now he basically...
He loves calling as well.
He basically raises flat raises all the time.
Yeah.
Occasionally he does 2.5 times the big blind.
Yeah.
So he does 2 times the big blind or 2.5 times the big blind.
Yeah.
Very successful. Now,
Hugely successful. By the way, I mean, not just very successful, hugely, I mean, compared to the number of buy-ins that he has, actually compared to his buy-ins, he's the most successful player of all time.
Of course. Now, I spoke with Willie Tan, who I rate very highly as a tournament player. I think he's a great tournament player. And he said to me, he said, I played with him, he said, he's amazing. He's an amazing player. He said, you know, he just Amazing.
And there's another thing to know about Alan Goering, which particular reference to my last 3 shows, because Alan Goering actually, to be honest with you, has inspired a lot of this chat that we're having today. Because I've gone through.
Why did he email in?
I wish he had. Nick and I started off talking about Phil Hellmuth's style and the image that he's trying to cultivate and how he's actually laying down over pairs pre-flop at the moment. And then we moved last night in the amateur night talking about deep stack a lot of the time. And today we've talked about implied odds, which sort of brings those two things together. And Alan Goering is the guy who inspired that in me, because Alan Goering said he will not play a tournament where he does not start and can maintain a significantly deep stack throughout. And he mentioned 4 players, 2 of whom I'd never even heard of, who can play deep stack. And someone else rated Daniel Negreanu and Phil Ivey as two other great deep stack players. And it's just the skill of being able to play deep stack is a great skill, because it is not about playing premium hands. And that's why I made that comment, that very important comment which you seized on, which is the guy calling with Queen 2 in the big blind is something that he may well have heard of or read of or seen Gus Hansen or Daniel Negreanu doing, but they had 100 times the big blind at the time, you know. And this concept of deep stack play, that's what Alan Goering plays, and he will not, categorically will not play in tournaments of less than 5,000 buy-in, because he doesn't believe he can play his game.
No, and that's right. I think it's well, I agree with him, and I think he has a style there which is very suited for taking charge of a table without too much risk. So basically he can get to see a lot of pots early on when he has this nice deep stack without too much risk. He doesn't bully his way. He realises it's totally incorrect to risk a lot of chips with a substandard hand to win a peanut of blinds. So he knows that.
So how would you play Alan Goering? Because I mean, I think the obvious answer straight up is you should be raising you should be raising significant amounts before the flop and decreasing those implied odds of his. No, I think you should be looking to re-raise him, because you realise that he raises quite a lot of hands. So now you take what his average hand is going to be. So you monitor when you get a chance to see. You get a chance to see what is his window of hands. Okay, hang on. We're talking about 2 different elements of his play. So we're talking about 2 different aspects of his play.
I thought you said how to play him.
No, yes. So I would say there are 2 different aspects of his play. Number 1 is he's going to be calling a lot of hands, right? So if he's not in the
still raises a lot. I think he raises more than he calls.
Okay, okay. But that's not how I've read him. I've read him that he does raise a lot, but and he raises this 2 times, but he's also calling most hands before the flop. So what I'm saying is, in that situation, if he's not in the pot yet, I'd be raising it and I'd be giving it big raises so that it costs him a lot to get in, and he doesn't like a lot to get in relation to his stack. But you're right. If he's already raised, and if he's raising a lot, if he's in that mode, and I bet he's got different speeds, then we should be re-raising.
Right. I've got to be a little bit worried because and I think this is a good thing to think about. You can't just be bothered about one table at the player, one player at the table, one table at the player, because there are other players.
Yeah, that's very true.
Now, if you over-raise when the blinds are small, you are making an incorrect play, and you might walk into Robert over there, who's got the business.
Yeah, that's true.
And so you can't.
So what do you do then?
So I think you're looking for situations when you say you're just raising in position here or whatever, or etc., etc. You're looking for situations where you, like we've got a big pot here, we've got ace, 4, 6 of hearts, we've got big J, he's got the 2 of hearts. Hard to believe that he thinks that his flush draw is going to be good.
But it would be.
But it would be. And L Piggy Wig has got the kings and puts it down because big J is represented that either they've got a decent heart or possibly has the ace.
Do you think that's a good example, James, of the benefits of a big stack beyond just the actual sum of money that you have? Psychological benefits of a big stack?
I think it was the case there that the big stack pressurized the 2 similar size stacks who were probably eyeing up second place.
See, I think there's 3 benefits of a big stack. Number 1 is ceteris paribus. If all players were exactly the same and you had 10 times the number of chips, you'd win it 10 times the number of times. That's Mason Malmuth and Klansky says. It gives us 10 times the chances, yeah?
Yep.
Number 2 is it allows you to play without fear. It has that psychological effect on you. And number 3, it means that whenever you go all in, you put the other person to a decision for his tournament place.
But I think the decision becomes harder when they're neck and neck because they are having their own private little battle.
Absolutely, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Well, let's talk about that situation, James, because that's a fascinating point.
Because El Pig there, I'm sure in another situation could say, oh, go on then, I don't believe you've got it. I think you're just on a flush draw. Right. I'm winning.
Right.
But he's looking at Saucy Blonde and said, listen, I've just got you pipped slightly. I don't particularly want to give up my second place, and I might be wrong. You might already have a flush, or you might have the ace. Hang on, I don't like the whole situation. Just, I'd rather pick my own fate.
Yeah.
And but Big J used his or her situation perfectly. Used the power of the stack there. Gave them the question. Gave them the problem.
Yeah.
And of course, that is a great thing in poker. Is give your opponent the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I always make bets that make other players make decisions. Definitely.
That's right. So you don't have to make the decision yourself. Saucy Blonde on the big blind with pair of knives. Oh, why couldn't you have made a move, Big J? Saucy says. If you had to go on a date with one of the players and you didn't know who they were, would you choose... You have to go. It's like a new reality TV show.
It's the weirdest question I've ever been asked on the show, James.
Would you choose El Pig, Big J, or Saucy Blonde? Well, come on. Tell the truth.
Saucy Blonde.
Thank you.
But, you know, Saucy Blonde is probably a 16-stone trucker.
It was your...
It's my choice, is it?
It was your choice. It'd be good for the reality TV show if it is. I'm not sure if you're playing the odds correctly here, because I think it's highly unlikely that Saucy Blonde is Oriental. So maybe...
That is very true.
Big J...
El Pig
I don't think it's going to be a girl. I don't think they call themselves El Pig, so I'd discount that one. No. So Big J, I think, was actually technically your correct choice. Could have been.
Thanks,
Oriental.
James. that's sorted out.
Cass's date there just wins another pot. And El Pig. Wow. That's what I saw right there. Makes up the blind. Check from Big J. Check from El Pig. And 6,000 from Big J. Takes it down. Definitely using the chips. Now, are we going to see anything there? It's a flat call on the small blind from El Pig. Is Big J going to raise up the price? Nope. And a rather nice pot for El Pig there. Trip queens and decides to bet it. Well, no difference, I think, because it'd be hard to imagine Big J was going to connect with anything too tempting on that flop. And El Pig actually hoping that Big J had the ace, thinking that he wouldn't have bet with the trip queens. I think that was his wicked plan. Both players have connected with the 7, middle pair. Big J got slightly the better kicker, but 2 pairs for El Pig.
And I would have smooth called an El Pig situation there. How about you, James?
Yes, I think I wouldn't want to give the game away. I'd try to get more chips. El Pig needs to get chips here, so...
How about now? Would you call now?
Well, the pot is 30,000 now.
See, I'm tempted to... Very few situations I'd do this, but I'm tempted even to call then as well, because Big J's been playing so aggressively. and because, as you say, I've got to double through.
Yeah. Well,
what do you think? Would you have put that raise in?
I think I could see your point. I think maybe this was a case for... Let's see what that gives him. 79. It really gets it pretty level.
Mm.
I don't know. That's a no risk. Doesn't have to... It's a close decision, that.
The question is...
it's a very close decision.
It is.
Because it did take him to 79,000, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
He virtually got back... really back into the game.
The two questions are, what are the chances, given the basket of hands he could have, that he will improve to beat me by the river? And particularly since there's 2 flush draws out there, I'm siding with El Pig. And the second question is, what are the chances that he'll bet out on the final street, isn't it?
I think the problem is that El Pig's second pair was very low.
Sure.
It was a 3.
Sure.
So now he can think that his opponent's got an overcard. If he has got a pair, he's got an overcard.
Yeah.
One way or the other. It doesn't matter which pair.
More possible outs to beat
and
him.
therefore, and then there's some either the other 2 cards could pair up as well.
Yeah.
So probably he might have about 9 outs, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe he's just happy enough to take that down.
Big J has the flush maze here. El Pig has the flush draw and the 9. This is a hand that could well do it for El Pig, but let's just see if he can get away from it. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it should. I'm just saying it could well.
Didn't get overexcited with that there.
He's certainly
checks, which is
certainly been unlucky to run into a flopped flush.
Big J.
Heads up.
There we go. Doesn't want to bet too much. Doesn't want to lose him.
Again, see, I'm not sure that I would even have bet there, James. I think at this stage in the tournament, trapping is such a good play. Maybe I'm just got a trappy head on, but I mean, El Pig can fold now. Whereas I think El Pig...
But wouldn't he, if he folds now, that would have meant that Big J wouldn't have got any money.
No, sure, I want him to bet out on the river. So I'm talking about inducing a bluff.
Yeah.
Is the trappy play.
Okay.
Yeah. If a king comes down on this flop, then we can may well see some fireworks.
Quite a high chance of a split pot if it went to the end.
I mean, heads up play for me is all about strategy, not tactics. It's all about, you know, what's your long-term goal? What are you trying to sucker this guy into something? Are you trying to erode him through raises? What are you trying to do? That
was a great bet there by El Pig.
Yeah, it was.
The pressure. And also the size was quite nice because it actually represented he had quite a good hand. He wasn't frightened.
Yeah.
He was sort of like, I don't mind playing this sort of bet. 3-3-4, 2 similar hands there. 7-9 and 7-8. Oh, and the lower kicker, it's gone up in value. Check, check. Oh, just called there in the small blind with ace-king. Now, will El Pig think that's weakness? No. Oh, dear.
Danger.
Big danger.
Warning
Small
team.
bet from Big J, 4,000.
El Pig just calls. I thought El Pig would raise and Big J would just call him there as a trappy play.
Big J, 4,000 again.
Is El Pig going to raise the turn?
I think he'll just call.
Yeah, because now he does. See,
oh,
he does.
Oh,
I'll shut my mouth.
Well, he took his weakness, and now there's a re-raise. Well, it's.
What about, in terms of time, James, would you have taken a bit more time to make Big J's re-raise there? Do you think the sudden re-raise looks weak or strong?
I think he was just. I think why he did it that way, he was looking like he was trying to bully him out of it.
Right. Okay.
He was trying to represent a bully.
Okay.
That's what my subconscious got in tune with him there. I think that's what he was feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
As it happens, I don't think he gets called whatever he does. So, but interesting. The think about the time there.
You think there's no chance he would have got called if he waited a long time and made it look like, oh God, the only way I can win this is by going all in? Would it have swayed Elpig at all?
I don't feel he calls whatever,
No.
but maybe you could have given him a bit more of a dilemma. That's interesting to think about.
I don't know at all. I think placing an emphasis on time on the internet is a bit of a red herring.
I think what he could have done is I think he could have just put in the minimum re-raise, which would now give Elpig a dilemma. Would say, oh, well, maybe I can still win even if I'm wrong, and oh, it would be awful if he bluffed me with a small bet, and he might get called then. And I think the very fact that he, oops.
It's all in, it's all over.
It is, and the ace is there. It's 2 pairs for Big J, Caspar's future blind date. And
I can't help thinking he's a trucker as well, James, I've got to be honest with you.
yeah, they're all truckers.
I mean,
it's a horrible reality programme, you've been tricked.
All right, he's...
We led you to think the saucy blonde was, you know, but no, they're all truckers.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well for me, does it? I mean, all right, he's $378 to the better, but...
That's a good point.
Is he going to pay for a date?
No.
Actually, I would if he paid for the date. Quick little foray into the forums here, James.
Oh.
There's a post by Dr. Dean, which I'll be honest with you, I don't fully... I understand it, but I think I pick up a slightly wrong end of the stick. But let's have a look. He says, here we go, observation. In limit poker, betting last on the button is a major advantage because of pot odds. In no limit poker, you notice that your winnings are a maximum around one behind the button. There is a first to bet advantage which pushes the position back. Question, how can you improve the winnings in this dip on the button? You still win, but the winnings aren't as much as they are earlier. Do you re-raise with Queen-Jack offsuit? He says, in my opinion, this is related to the gap concept, the tightness of your play, and the fact that a raise in late looks like a blind attack, so people tend to call and other people's play. What do you think, James?
I'm not fully in tune, maybe I'm tired, I'm not fully in tune with his drift there, but what I would say on the comment of making raises on the cutoff and making raises on the button is I do believe that people do become more suspicious of the button raise these days. So therefore making button raises with substandard hands, because they're going to be called more than you would like, probably become less profitable. And because you are taking the extra risk by making the raise in the cutoff, I think that this probably wouldn't surprise me to be a more profitable area, because it probably does get a little bit more respect. So, but guide me, was he going
Well, that's the thing, like I say, I prefaced this, didn't I, by saying that he says it's an observation, not a fact. In limit poker, betting last on the button is a major advantage because of pot odds. In no limit poker, you notice your winnings are a maximum around one behind the button as a first to bet advantage.
Oh, well, I'd say that's why it is anyway. I'm sure that's why it is.
That would be my response. I mean, I know that TJ is of the opinion that you steal now from 5 off the button in major tournaments. That's his feeling. And I personally, in sit and goes, I don't like to be moving all in on the button or the cut-off either, because I just think the fold equity is tiny from those positions. So I'm not sure I've got TJ's respect to move in 5 off the button, but I certainly think that it needs to be earlier than that. I'm not sure that's what Dr. Deem's asking, actually. So,
but this is interesting, why we look at a player like Alan Goering, who would say, well, I don't have to worry so much, because not so many, a smaller percentage of my chips are involved in this anyway.
That's right.
And you are at certain tables where people, of course, think that the small raise is very scary.
That's right. As I've been advocating.
So when he moves to another table, small raise, he goes, uh-oh, I'll leave that one.
Yeah, and you see, that's why I think that Goering's play is made up of a lot of calls as well. He calls for implied odds, but what he's doing when he raises that 2 times the big blind is we get all the thing that we've talked about of incorrect folds.
Yes.
But then also he has got this is the thing, a raise, both mathematically and psychologically, establishes a dominance on the flop.
Yes.
Because people will check to that raise, even though it's a 2 times the raise, and even though he could have, 6-2 in the cutoff, it's still a raise. And I think he has, isolated. It's dead simple. That's the thing about it. It's dead simple. He's isolated this portion of the human psychology that goes, all right, a check to the razor because I've missed it too.
And he capitalised by the fact that people want to say, well, I'll get you, and they're trying to wait for this big hand to get him with. Of course, it takes quite a while to find this big hand. So all the time, he's capitalising on this situation.
The other thing that I saw Goering doing when I had the pleasure of watching him play in the Bellagio was a lot of calling. He makes a lot of calling on the flop. And do you know why? Because it gives him this astonishing amount of outs on the turn to bet out with. Yeah. So if the flop is at all textured, he'll check and call, and then it doesn't matter what he's got down there. How do you do anything with that bet that he makes on the flop when any one of these possible hands that you would call with on the flop, any one of the possible outs falls on the turn, and it makes him a very dangerous player from that point of view. So what he's constantly doing, I think that the constant that I would cite there, both for the 2 times the raise before the flop and the calls on the flop, is exploiting psychological weaknesses that players have.
It just makes him such an awkward player, doesn't it? Awkward player to play against.
Yeah, interesting. Good. Okay, folks. What have we got? We've got a couple of minutes left. Let's go to a little cash game. We might, or we might not.
Oh, let's go. We're there. And look, we've gone to see Smooth Cut. Smooth Call with aces. Mr. Echo. Not such a smooth call with Queen 7. Buzz Lighthead calls with the 10s. Wow. Marty Doc.
Continuing this theme of lots of pre-flop playing hands, I tell you.
Well. Raises with King Queen. Smooth Cut re-raises to 850. What does the pair of 10s do, Cass?
I think it's a no-brainer, yeah. I'm folding every day of the week.
Marty Doc. See now, Marty Doc there, I mean, to me, the pair of 10s could have had a harder decision than Marty Doc, I think.
Yes.
But he hasn't got enough chips.
Right, okay, yeah.
If he had more chips, well then, he has position.
Sorry, James, because I'm looking at an email to close the show. So he had a pair of 10s and he called, didn't he? Then Marty Doc raised, and then the aces re-raised behind him. Yes. Yeah? Yes. In that situation, I fold a pair of 10s. Yes, and certainly with his stack size, I would have done as well. But I'm saying if he had a bigger stack, I could then call, because I've got position. And this would be a very nice one, because now I'd say, I know what you've got. You've got a big pair here, and it's bigger than mine. And I could well hit the 10 here, and you won't be frightened of it. Because you don't necessarily think I'm calling with 10s. So it's got a nice, juicy situation, because that situation, you've already got some of the ingredients. The ingredient is there. It's a re-raise. Lovely. Well, listen, I'll tell you what, James. Let's have the shortest burst of cash game ever in the history of Poker Night Live. Let's go to an email now before we finish off the show. Because Dead Spiders has written an email with a pair of 10s, in fact. He says, good evening, guys. I have a question about a hand I played in tonight's MTT. In the third hand, I get 10-10 in the small blind. The button, who in the previous hand had raised hard pre-flop, then gone all in on the flop, made the same big raise. 9 big blinds. He's in the small blind with 10-10. I came over the top for 3.5 times the raise, looking to take it down now, but not too unhappy if I'm called. The big blind then moves all in behind me, and the alleged maniac calls. He doesn't say for how much. I either think, although I didn't really fear the initial raise from the suspected maniac, the call looks strong. However, the push from the big blind looks like huge strength. Since reading Harrington Volume 1, I've been trying to loose up a little, call more when my pot odds are favourable. However, so far I've been struggling to get the balance right. I have a look at my pot odds. With the time pressure, I quickly approximate them to be around 4-1, later about 4.6-1. I think a bit more. If I fold, I still have 770 chips, which leaves me a lot to catch up, but still comfortable, stacked relative to the blinds. Since they both look very strong, I reason there's a very high chance at least one of them has an overpair. As my 5-second warning goes, I decide to fold. They both show down ace-king. Four heads are slapped. What do you think, James? Did he do the right thing?
Yes, I think he did.
Yeah?
Yep.
Talk me through why.
I think more times than enough the guy's definitely got an overpair to him. And now he's just got to really get lucky. He's not getting any implied odds. He's got no more money left. He's just trying to win a raffle. It's not a great raffle because he's going to be probably about a 20% chance. Plus, he's no bargain against ace-king. He's just got the sort of... It looks a nice scenario here where, in fact, they've both got ace-king. Okay, that will happen sometime, but that's
well,
not going to happen.
Well, if one of them's got ace-king, he's getting 4-1 on an even money shot. So pot odds wise, he's
oh no, he's great against the two ace-kings. He's in great shape.
Okay, so if let's just say the big blind.
But it just matter. I'd have to look closely at the mathematics of that situation there to see how much. I didn't capture all the maths of that.
He's getting 4-1 at the end there, basically.
Against
the big
two
blind
players.
Is pushed in. Yeah, he's getting 4-1 from the two players. Let's just say one thing. Let's just say the other player hadn't called. It had just been the big blind push. Would you have called it then? I
mean, it could easily be against ace-king and a pair of queens, couldn't he?
I think that's what he kind of put it on, actually.
Yeah, he could have easily been against that. It's that, and he still had enough chips to play with, I think he said.
Yeah.
I think it's the one life rule there, which probably would have made me put it down.
Okay. Listen, folks, it's been a fantastic show from my point of view. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as James and I have. We've certainly learnt, and that's always a sign of a good show, I think. Tomorrow, I'm on again.
Again?
I don't even know who. And then I'm doing Tuesday. So please tune in for more
Tuesday with me.
Live. Excellent.